Holy shit! It's Smite's birthday! I have to get everyone a card.
So we definitely.
Oh, come on. Again?
Tarot time! A card. Uh-oh.
And it really wouldn't be one of our traditional Smite videos without the classic car explosion out there. But a happy birthday to Smite, and welcome back to the SPL Kickoff tournament. We're getting ready to dive in to our second set of the day. That's going to be the Jade Dragons up against the Olympus Bolts. My name is J-Mac here. We're going to talk a little bit about the birthday promo that we got for you guys. So if you haven't already seen everything between the patch notes, between being in-game itself, jump in-game right now, because as long as you are playing Smite during this birthday promo week, you have the chance to earn rewards every single day that you play, including limited edition Husky Handler Scotty skin, plus all kinds of other great things out there through this birthday event. So make sure that you are logging in every day to play and try and earn towards that skin. We've also got a cool gem sale going on, 33% off of all of your gems. So if there was ever a time that you wanted to buy something in Smite, now is the perfect time to do so when all that stuff is on sale and celebrate the great Smite birthday. But it's J-Mac, and I got Mifflin joining me here for set number 2 with the Bolts and the Dragons. We're going to be talking a lot about these two teams, specifically because we got the Bolts who have been sticking together now 3 years going, and the Dragons with a fresh new look here in the mid lane.
Yeah, I'm really excited, right? Just the mid lane, though, for the Dragons. It's now Pagon from Sturdy Artisans fame who's joined this team, and as you said, the Olympus Bolts have stuck holistically together, I think, ever since the Renegades days, right? Like, back before we had these legacy teams. It's crazy that they've been together for so long. This might just be their year, though. I mean, having talked to him in the studio, Barracuda came in. He looked confident. Similarly, though, the Jade Dragons looked confident, so maybe I'm not confident anymore in their confidence. But either way, at the end of the day, it's going to be a fun set.
At the end of the day, though, only one team will move on for all of these brackets as we take a look at it. We had our first set of the day with the Leviathans and the Valkyries. Leviathans got a nice little 2-0 to start off their Season 9 debut, and now the Dragons versus the Bolts. Winner of this will face off against the Leviathans in our second set. That'll happen up tomorrow on at least. And we still got Scarabs Kings, Titans, and Warriors. As you can see, our full schedule for just today. I mean, this is only games that we're showing today, and there's 4 of these best-of-3 matches.
You know, J-Mac, I just keep looking at these new graphics,
They're
man.
sick.
I feel like we could just, like, turn them into neon signs and sell them, dude. Like, I would love to have all this in my room.
I'm going to be honest. The first time that we panned from this one, I kind of forgot that that was just a graphic and not an actual neon sign.
Oh, you're right.
The brickwork that's right behind it, the brick
That's
really
real
gives it
brick.
a real nice touch there. But, man, what a great new set of graphics. What a great new set of teams that we have out here. New players jumping into the league, teams jumping all the way around. And talking about teams that have new players into the league, specifically the Jade Dragons. Talking about mid laners more than anything else here. Pagon, now a fresh look to this team. Hurrywin, no longer here with the Dragons in that mid lane that has been replaced by the SCC powerhouse in Pagon. And it's one that a lot of players across the league, whether it be the SPL or even amongst the SCC, a lot of these players have been really hyping up this mid laner.
Yeah, I had thought Pagon was SPL bound since we saw him way back when, right? He's been dominating the SEC for years. He's a kind of a standard monolith of whatever is meta in mid lane, I'm going to be rocking that. You're probably going to see a lot of Merlin clips. Wouldn't be surprised if we see some Tiamat here. Depending on how far back this goes, we might see some Raijin as well. But Merlin generally seems to be the pick that he is most dominant on. He's very comfortable on this style of play. And that's something I think that the Dragons have not had in recent years. Back when Twig was playing for them, it was a very aggressive style mid laner. Raijin jumping in aggressively, like jumping in a tower at level 3 was the meme around the Jade Dragons. Once Hurrywin joined the squad, it was, okay, well, we got the Yanis guy. He's going to play these like assassin styles, facilitator, unselfish mid laner. Now the Jade Dragons have got themselves what I would consider to be just look mid laner up in the dictionary. You've got it. This guy has got that standard play through and through. And I'm excited to see how that changes the rest of this squad. That said, the Jade Dragons last year got off to a roaring start, kind of petered out a little bit as the year went on, and then found themselves around upper middle of the pack. So with growing pains, are we going to see a team that comes out roaring again? Are we going to see them still around where they were? Are they going to have to take a little bit of time to wind up? I think it all revolves around the mid laner and his synergy with the jungler. That mid 3v3 seems to be pretty important here in the SPL.
And that's one of the things here with the Dragons. You know, they have the same core four of everybody from last season around, only changing out the mid laner here. So we've seen what the rest of the team is capable of now. How is this new mid laner going to slot in with the team? How is the rest of the Dragons going to adjust to having this new mid laner in here? And I think kind of going in and talking about the change-ups to the meta style of picks that Pagon goes through, where I think you said a monolithic... What was the exact phrase?
Why would you ever ask me what I said, man? You have a way better chance of remembering than I do.
That's a good case here. But, I mean, just going with a lot of the standard monolithic meta player here. I think that was the phrase that you used.
I said that?
I think so,
I'm
Mifflin.
good.
I'm gonna get you. That was a good phrase there. But going with a lot of the standard here is really kind of the big thing, because that's something that the Dragons have been missing for a while. Even when we were getting towards the latter half of last year, we saw Hurrywin going for these more kind of out there picks, the Jonquils, the Soul Mids, when those weren't necessarily maybe the meta at that time. But talking a lot about the meta and a lot of the mid lane, there's one person who sticks around the mid lane a long time, and that's the jungler. We have Sam for Soccer standing by for our pregame interview to talk to him a little bit about, and kind of more than anything, talk about how this, how Pagon is really adjusting in your team here. Most of the league out here has only made, either one adjustment or none to their roster here. And with you guys keeping Pagon, or keeping your core four and then now adding Pagon, how does that kind of change up your dynamic as a team?
I don't know if it changes it that drastically or anything. I think like it just kind of a bit more like fresh, even though like you keep a lot of the old. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it changes too much.
How does that freshness kind of change up maybe your play style into the mid? I mean, a lot of it is you want it to get very aggressive, where Hurrywin is typically kind of sitting back a little bit more, waiting towards that late game farm. How does Pagon change up your mid 2v2 a bit?
I mean, I don't know if it's that different, like I said again, but like Daniel definitely likes to fight a lot. We'll probably be getting in there, and yeah, it's just what we do.
Just doing what you guys have been doing for the last couple of years, and now that your team has stuck together for such a long time, do we think that this is finally the year of the Dragons out here, Sam?
Yeah, probably. I think we're gonna have a pretty good year, to be honest. I think it was a lot of unfortunate things last year, and yeah, I think just inherently it's just going to go better. But yeah, I'm pretty confident how our year's going to go.
All right, well, Sam, thanks for sticking by for our pregame interview. I'll let you get back with the team so you guys can get started up.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. And kind of one of the big things that Sam's talked about here, just to kind of reiterate, is even though they have a new mid laner here, because it's still their core four, not a whole lot of things have really changed out here.
No, not a lot. It's something that the Dragons have been very used to, just replacing that mid laner year in and year out, adapting them to their style of play, and making sure that they work together well as a team. But, J-Mac, you asked Sam if it was the year of the Dragon. I got to get ahead of it, man. It's actually the year of the Tiger.
Ah, I see. Okay. You got me there for a moment. I was like, you're the what?
Yeah, it's the Zodiac.
Yeah, you got me with the Zodiac here. But the Dragons are going to be squaring up against the Olympus Bolts. This team hasn't changed anything. We said it at the top of the desk. We said it earlier on at the end of set one on the desk. This is a team that is now stuck together, going on to their third year since their time as the Renegades. No roster adjustments have really happened with this team. And now I think is kind of that ultimate, asking, is this the year of the Dragons? Is this the year that the Bolts can finally get something going? I mean, partway through, we're really going back to that. But I mean, partway through phase two, I mean, the Bolts were tying up for one of the longest winning streaks in the SPL. And then after that winning streak kind of faded away at the end of phase two, we really didn't see a whole lot more out of the Bolts from the rest of the year.
Yeah, the conversation around the Bolts has always been consistency. Can they play at their peak for long enough, or do they peak at the right times? I would argue that they did not peak at the right time. Had they done so, they probably would be wearing rings right now. That was how dominant they were for a certain stretch. I believe it was, phase 2 of the SPL last year, where they found that 9 or so win streak. If they did that like in the last couple of months, maybe we would be talking about some different world champions. But the conversation around them really is, or any team rather, when you start making roster changes or choose not to, is, hey, do we have a squad right now, us core 5, can we win worlds? Or is this a team that has the making of world champions? And the Olympus Bolts and staying together has already answered that question. We don't need to ask them. They've answered it in their decision making. They stuck together. They think they can win Worlds with this team. And they've shown it time and time again. They can be dominant in this league. So what are they going to do in Season 9 to change? What are they going to do in Season 9 to find that consistency? Are they going to try and stick with a similar style and just keep running that down? Are they going to become more adaptable? Are they playing more of the same? I'm very curious to see how this squad looks. Today going to be a great heat check to what version of the Olympus Bolts we're going to have at the beginning of Season 9.
I mean, a heat check of a lot of what they've been playing against throughout these years. I mean, the Dragons, again, are a team that have been sticking together for the most part, only making small changes here and there. Now with the Bolts getting a good look at the Dragons, you know, maybe whether it be through scrims or anything else like that, they've gotten their opportunity to have some moments to kind of see what the Dragons are able to bring out here. But I think a lot of it will come down to this mid 2v2. That's where the big plays have been happening. And we saw it in our very first set with Panatom Shinto up against Benny and Kirmi, just to kind of see where a lot of that control comes through here. Ven and Lasbra sticking together yet again and really kind of dialing in on these. I mean, the mid meta has been one of the most back and forth ones so far this year. I mean, we've had, what, like 2 or 3 different metas already evolve in mid lane. Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if we see the mid meta change completely based on some of the itemization changes we've seen in recent patches. Those helmets go crazy, man. You shouldn't be allowed to buy more than one. You've only got the one head, unless you're like Agni. So when you go like Celestial Legion plus Jade Emperor, I think that opens up the door to things like the Zhongqi, where you can be that quadrupedal Tiamat just running it down the center of the map. And I think that is a style that will really fit with Veneno. He loves playing that aggression. He wants to get in your face. I am of the firm belief that he was a solo laner in a past life, man. That guy just loves getting involved, and now with some of these items, I think he can do so a lot more safely.
Well, maybe solo in a past life, but a mid laner here in the present time. We'll go ahead and talk to Veneno just a little bit for our pregame interview. Kind of get your thoughts here, Ven. I mean, we had 4 teams not make a single change this year as far as their rosters. 3 teams only add 1, maybe 2 little adjustments out here. With your team sticking together now for the 3rd year, was there any discussion during this offseason of any kinds of changes to this roster?
No, we were pretty fine with like everything that happened at the end of the year. We were completely open with each other. If people wanted to go elsewhere, just be honest and open with the team and stuff like that. But throughout the whole year, we thought we played pretty well. We just kind of made mistakes at bigger tournaments and stuff like that, where I mean, you just got to learn and grow from it. So we're going to take this tournament kind of like just like practice for tournaments and stuff like that. And, yeah, see how it goes. We've been practicing hard on the off season, and, yeah.
Yeah, well, you're going up here against a rookie talent to the SPL as far as the mid lane is concerned, up against Pagon. You know, has there been any kind of adjustments maybe to your play style to try and adapt to this new rookie?
No, it's been – we've scrimmed him a couple of times. I mean, he's a good player. He's been playing ranked for a while. He's been around the scene for a while, so – I mean, I expect good things out of him. It's just going to take some time, I believe. And, yeah, hopefully this is a nice, fun little tourney.
Well, now that you're here on your 3rd year, do you think that this is the year of the Bolts' 3rd time the charm?
Hopefully. I mean, we're putting in the work still. We appreciate each other's company and everything like that. So hopefully it is.
Well, hopefully so for you. Thank you so much for staying by for the interview. I'll let you get back with the team to get ready.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, scram. Get out of here.
Hold on. You say scram to him, but not to Sam.
Why would I? Some people are more scrammable than others. We've talked about this.
You know, that's my mistake. Even trying to ask about the scrammableness of another person out here. But confidence out of Veneno. I mean, one of those things, as I talked about, was a lot of teams didn't make adjustments or made very few ones. These are 2 of the teams that have made little to no adjustments, specifically with the Bolts making none. And I like what he said about the openness of the team is, if you don't think that it's going to work out, let us know, and we'll find a replacement. We'll make those adjustments as needed. But these Bolts players are confident that this is the team that can hopefully get them that ring this year. Maybe 3rd time is the charm, because they haven't made those changes. We'll see how things look, though, as far as the play field is concerned. And kind of dialing in on Lasbra here, we had the changes to Circuit, the massive rebalance that came this patch.
Yeah, the Lasbra pick.
I was going to go right there. This is like Lasbra's quintessential pick. This and Pele. When I think Lasbra, I think Circuit and Pele. And with the changes that we've seen to itemization, with the changes now specifically to Circuit, do we think that this is now high priority to ban those gods maybe specifically against Lasbra?
Well, for those of you who have not read the patch notes or read the changes to Circuit, I understand it's like 1,000 words. It's crazy, the mathematics behind it. The TLDR is Circuit tank or bruiser is no longer as strong as it once was. If you want to play Circuit, you either go full tank and you deal no damage, you become a CC pillar for your team, or you go full damage in the jungle and you start one-shotting like she used to upon release. But you're a lot squishier, and how her ultimate works, Last Breath, you kind of lock yourself down a little bit, makes it very easy to return that damage. Also, maybe the most major change is the change to Circuit's leap. Now has 10 less units on it. Used to be the longest leap in the game. Now it is more so in line with every other leap in the game. For all Circuit players in the chat, I know it's so hard. You used to have some of these leaps that you were used to going over walls, no longer works. So whether or not I want to see it banned against Lasra immediately, I don't think so. I think you heat check it, because when Lasra played it, it was that bruiser style, was that tanky initiator. We'll see if he can play it the assassin way.
Well, we'll see if that Circuit does make it through here. Picks and bans for game number 1 between the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons here in our Season 9 kickoff tournament. It will be the Bolts on first pick with a... Normally, I would probably at this point just kind of call this a Benny Q ban here, Raw. The first one taken off the table by the Bolts here up against the Jade Dragons, the Erlong Shen. Doesn't really raise any eyebrows or questions here. That is just a very standard pick out here. But the Bolts are going for stuff that we wouldn't really imagine being first ban.
No, these seem to be targeted bans, or maybe they're trying to hide a little bit, you know, save some energy for the SPL proper. But removing Ra, I think Ra is legitimately very strong right now. Again, the helmet build fits him very well. Ra's a god that wants to get a little bit closer range with that Divine Light. Also makes very liberal use of every helmet, actually. Even Lotus Crown, very strong on this pick. So it's a very survivable god as well. So no arguments from the bans so far, but that it has left a lot of priority up and available. Things like the Yamoja come to mind, the Bastats of the world. We'll see if Fenrir sees similar levels of priority as well. I'm excited. First up, it's the Kleena. It's a lot of damage. It's a lot of structure damage. It's a lot of objective damage. It's a lot of god damage. Not a lot of CC, though. This god is just here to put the DPS out.
Yeah, so that's going to be a first look now at Kleena in Season 9 for the SPL. Looking at some of these other bans, I mean, Gilgamesh, even with the hits that he's had to all of his kit, basically has been adjusted at some point. Every time this guy sees nerfs, he still comes back into this, finding a way to creep himself back in this meta. And also the RDO ban out here by the Dragons. I want to kind of hit that one because RDO has been around for such a long time. You know, kind of watching some of Final Case tier list stuff, he really pits RDO as being one of, if not the best gods right now in Season 9, especially with these changes to the helmets. So no surprise that the Dragon solo laner would want to have that god taken away if he can't pick that one up for himself right out.
I mean, we knew who she was strong in Season 8 as well. Yarkor made a splash with that pick and has continued to do so. I think this is going to be at least a couple of months where we see Guardian solo really start to perform. I was talking a little bit earlier during the SEC lands, or not lands, the event, and it was, okay, we're seeing a lot of Jormungandr, we're seeing a lot of Guardians of Solo, but we were on like 9.2. They weren't exactly super strong. If we saw Jormungandr today in the Soul lane, I wouldn't be super surprised. That is how strong Jade Emperors is, like, just in general. That's how strong Celestial Legion is in general. It really has just made these Soul lane Guardians that much stronger. But that extends to every mage. I mean, those are items that you're picking up full stop, and ESET counts herself amongst those that will make pretty strong use of this. It's got great flex potential for the Jade Dragons. We could see it go into support. We could see it go into mid. I think it might likely be headed for support, just because I know it fits PVM style, but haven't seen it from them just yet. We haven't seen it from this team just yet. So maybe that we're guessing is going to be an indicator that the Bolts are guessing as well.
Potentially so. I mean, even talking to Shinto at the end of the last set there in his postgame, he was just talking, singing the praises of this. He said, it's a god that you cannot give an inch in that mid lane just because she will take a full mile out here. But couple that ESET with the Uller, so still leaves a little bit of flex up in the air here for the Dragons, but no flex as far as the third pick out of the Olympus Bolts. Scotty right out the gate for the Hunter on the Bolts here. Barracuda, probably one of the most known Scotty players out here in the league, probably even one of the more known Scotty players out in the world as far as that's concerned. And tailoring that with a Cabrakan, so maybe some jungle Cabrakan, but we've been seeing a lot more of Cabrakan going towards support role as of recent.
Yeah, support, solo, anywhere you can get some of that defense available to you. I would probably prefer to see Cabrakan in a role where he can go more so towards that bruiser role, because if you play him in the jungle, just by nature of his kit, he needs to go that glass cannon, needs to be just, hey, I'm in there. I use my Polynomicon, and I've got a whole lot of power stacked up. So stun, you're dead because of an auto attack immediately afterward. But if it did go into the jungle, that would likely leave Kleena in the solo lane. Scotty acting as the only duo laner here for the Bolts so far, and that's not weak at all. You could very easily have Kleena clean up in the solo lane. She's got great damage output. Again, the ability to go towards those neutral objectives is incredibly strong just because of the double tear the veil. Even if she does go for a little bit more so of a survivable build with some of that defense, Pyromancer still needs to be worried. All you need is a jungler over there with you, and you can immediately move in towards it. We do get a light shined on the Jade Dragons draft, though. Tiamat locked in, and now we get a much better look at this E set. I'd be doing us a disservice if I don't say, hey, maybe it could go into the jungle, but I think it is very much so more so slated for that support role. Tiamat very likely headed towards mid, and then Ull will be matching up with E set in that long lane. That is a very, very aggressive duo lane. You do not need the axe for Uller. The axe is just to set up Hail of Arrows, Bladed Arrow, right? That's the combo. Do it off Spirit Ball. Do it off the slow from Dispel Magic. That is a lot of range setup for the Jade Dragons. The poke battle should favor them.
And as we jump into the second round of the bans, it's Nox and Ares. Interestingly enough, seeing the Nox out there, but kind of maybe shines a little bit of light as to what we saw during the World Championships where ESET support was picked up by the Bolts, and then the Dragons countered it with the Nox support right after that one to really shut it down. So not wanting to fall into that potential trap up here. And then on the other side, the Odin and the Daji. Daji, I mean, you look at the first three gods there, and that's a field day for this Daji. But as those bans finish out, the Jade Dragons will instead lock in Achilles as their fourth pick here. We've seen some flex to him in towards the jungle, but I'd be doing a disservice of also saying that this is a more common solo lane, especially tail end of Season 8 was one of the top solo laners.
It is. The Jade Dragons jungler, Sanford Soccer, is ever the contrarian and loves playing these picks in the jungle. He says all the time, if you're even nearby and willing to listen, I'm like the best Achilles in the world, I'm the best Mulan in the world, like I want to get out there and get active in the jungle, and that's a pick that I could see piloted by him, but more so likely for solo lane. And if you are worried about Cabrakan going into the solo, because that generally is going to be the flex. Now that Ymir's been locked in, we can pretty confidently say that it's going to head over to Jake in the duo lane. So it's either Kleena jungle with Cabrakan solo or the vice versa, Cabrakan in the jungle with Kleena solo. Either way, Achilles is a pretty strong matchup into both of those picks. You can stop the channeled ability of Kleena, that Screech with your own stun. You can stop the channeled ability of Cabrakan with the stun as well. So I'd argue the Jade Dragons do a very good job of playing around that flex potential from the Olympus Bolts, making sure that no matter what, you're at least a little bit confident for Final K.
I've seen a lot of change-ups in the mid lane over the course of this season alone. I mean, 2 to 3 different little mini metas to popping in between the flat pen meta. So we were
Do
seeing
not forget
off.
the
Now that
name,
flat pen has
Morgan
been nerfed a
Le
bit.
Fay.
So we've been seeing a lot more of this Tiamat kind of pop her way back in. And I was wondering where this pick was going to go for Veneno, but it will be Morgan Le Fay as a final selection for the Bolts to square up against this Tiamat. Lots of long-range poke, lots of safety in this kit, some decent sustain, and maybe we will be seeing this Achilles go jungle. Still could see it go solo because Thor, okay, never mind, no Thor, got baited. Instead, it is Hun Bat, so now very likely sliding that Achilles to solo.
Yeah, I agree. Hunbots actually has a very strong matchup here. You can peel very easily with Fear No Evil. No surprise, he's always been that ultimate bot for your team, but it is a lot easier now in Season 9 to slot that full 40% CDR if you so choose. And he's also one of the best gods at using that Hydra's Lament, which has seen a buff, now has 10% penetration on it. Wouldn't be surprised if it's like Hunbot's going like Bumbas immediately into Jotuns, immediately into Hydras, and being like, yo, my Fear No Evil is always up. I am always ready to take an engagement. Meanwhile, on the other side, still curious to see where this Kleena and Cabrakan find themselves once the game starts up proper, but you have to be concerned about the Bolt's ability to survive some of these ganks. You don't really have a whole lot of mobility for either of your carries. Scotty and Morgan Le Fay are very easy to close gap on, especially for a god like Hunbots.
And Morgan Le Fay, you know, a god that we saw really, you know, kind of rise up when she was actually able to hit competitive play. Saw a little bit of a fallback, but it really feels like that Dragonflight just keeps her in this meta no matter what. It really just keeps you up against just about any god. I mean, when the auto attack warriors were really rising up, she was a great answer to it because you pop that second ability and they just don't get a fight up against you.
No, not at all. And the third ability giving you 20% additional movement speed. I know a lot of people are like still surprised by that. They're like, why is Morgan Le Fay so fast? It's built into the kit, man. She just moves that quickly. CC immunity, the ultimate. If you're able to predict that Fear No Evil from Hunbots, you can just walk out of its range. She's got tools to fight in. She's got tools to survive. It's just that counterplay. Once that ultimate goes down, Hunbots doesn't have to get in the Dragonflight range. He can toss out the Sacred Monkey. He could toss out the Fear No Evil from a range. You've got CC immunity for Achilles. If he's initiating the fight with a Fatal Strike, there's no way you're peeling with Dragonflight there either. So it's all about the peel potential so far from the Olympus Bolts. And between double walls, Ymir and Kabrakan, you've got a lot of peel. But similarly, on the other hand, Shell getting a buff now, you can go towards that Phantom Shell. You're already getting all that survivability from your Relic. Now you're getting the ability to walk through walls as well. You're not dedicating a Relic slot just to Phantom. I think that those two gods, Kabrakan and Ymir, have inadvertently eaten a nerf.
And as we start looking at these two rosters now that they are fully lined out with all of their selections here, Mifflin, at what point in the game is really where these two compositions as a whole shine? I mean, where do the Bolts need to find their success at so they can find a win? And comparably, where do the Dragons find their success?
When you look at the Bolts draft, I really think like early game pressure, right? You've got Ymir, who's got Frostbite, so he's just dealing a lot of damage early on. Scotty's got another body at all times and can just slow you down very easily. Even Kabrakan gets off to a quick start. So I'm saying early for the Bolts, mid for the Dragons.
Well, let's see how it pans out for both of these teams. Game number 1 between the Bolts and the Dragons going right now.
Our first look at the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons here in Season 9. The Bolts, the exact same team that we had in Season 8, Gormizer, a team that was on one of the longest winning streaks of the year back in Season 8. And the Jade Dragons, a team who have made a change to their roster, Gordon. a swap over in their mid lane.
How do we end up with 9 out of 10 same players? That's impressive.
Yeah, new coaches as well, as J-Mac
True.
lets us know. And your first look at Dolson and Gore in Season 9 of the SPL. We don't care about us as much.
Oh,
But
no, I meant shuffle the. We'll talk about coaches. Well, like Cheerio's a coach. Cheerio's pretty good.
yeah, it's
He's
an
a pretty
important
good
thing.
coach.
No, but Gore, I think I talked to Zapman about this actually during the Leviathans
Yeah.
team check-in. I feel like minimal changes going into Season 9, and a lot of it in Zapman's eyes is because at different points throughout the year, each of the teams in the league had a peak where they were like really hitting their stride, realizing their potential. The Bolts didn't place as well as they wanted to at Worlds, but they had the longest win streak of the year in Season 8. So if you can build on that, and so I think it's finding that balance.
I don't know. I think I know where they'd try to find that trade. Is I'd
Right.
drop the win streak to win Worlds.
To win Worlds, of course. But I think this is a roster that said, hey, we know that we have the potential to beat all of these teams in a row. And then the Jade Dragons, they swap things out in the mid lane. Could be a different look there. Pagon, brother of Benny Q, by the way. I think that's kind of a fun little fact. A couple of brothers joined the SPL.
And they will be playing later in Phase 1. I'm
That's right.
excited
They
to
will be
watch
playing
them go
against-
up against each other.
And in Phase 2 and in Phase 3. And
Well,
all
yeah,
throughout
but
the
like
year.
the first one's like the best, you know?
There were plenty of brother matchups throughout the course of this year. I just think the storyline score a lot of fun going into Season 9. And really this week is about getting your first look at a lot of these teams and almost exhibition matches. Let's see what some of these new rosters look like. Let's see if it's going to be the year of the Bolts, things like that. And what a way to start off the year. We get a Barracuda Scotty in Game 1.
I'm going to be honest with you. So I didn't expect the Kerninos earlier. I would not have called the Scotty. It works out perfectly because you can get the Scotty skin in-game.
Yeah,
if
right.
I had my phone immediately available, I would pull it out
Can I
and
help
tell
you?
you exactly which skin it is because I'm blanking on the name of it.
Can you buy it in-game right now?
You can get it from playing the game in the
Got it.
birthday event. And so there you go. Like as far as I know, you don't even have to buy it. But gyms are 33% off
And
anyway.
so if you needed to buy it, now would be the time of year to go in. And
It'd be a lot easier for you now than like a month from now.
Yeah, agreed.
Honestly, now even than 4 days from now. On Monday, not as good. Sunday, still good.
The key is just loading up as many gems as you're going to spend this year.
I would do
all at once.
I would do that. Like no joke. Whenever I needed to buy gyms, I would like wait for the sales, and then I would heavy load how many gyms I was gonna
That's
get,
right.
and then the next like 3 patches, I'd just be balling.
Well, Gore, let's jump into Game 1. Why don't we? Between the Bolts and the Jade Dragons, it's an icy duo lane for the Olympus Bolts. Ymir plus Scotty up against PBM.
That is very frigid.
And Panda Cat. It is very, very chilly. Barracuda throwing up the hands because Final K pauses us for the second time within 10 seconds. The highest.
Sorry, the emphasis,
Oh,
the
yeah.
call out.
Come on! Well, it was funny in the player cam. You see Barracuda throwing those hands up. We want to get in the game. We want to look at these teams as they're going to look in Season 9, but we're going to have to wait a little while.
The good news is, I was
is the good
thinking
news?
about this during the draft, so it works out pretty perfectly. is just how much I like that duo lane. I think it's really interesting because the
Thematically, of course, too.
Not just thematically though, but like gameplay wise, I like the fact that we see the dragons go for the E set.
Oh, dragons!
And that immediately they end up banning the Nox again. It's something we saw the Leviathans do as a counter to the Nox support, and it worked really really well when Jake was the one who was unfortunately the E set for that set. So they knew that there was a way to shut it down. But I like this, even though Mifflin mentions the Phantom Shell, which is really going to be powerful throughout this game. I think early on, unless they bury all their gold into a relic upgrade, then you're going to be pretty much set to isolate them. You're going to have really good walls. I think the duo lane, especially being a huge point of contention early in this game throughout all of that. Jake's got some sick Ymir walls. We saw him a lot last year. I am really excited to see how well, if he can lock them down. Unfortunately, it is only E set really on the team.
Here's my question.
Achilles?
The question always is.
Okay.
Is it going to be the 0-5 Jake Ymir, right? Where nothing goes his way in the early game, none of the walls are hitting.
Yeah.
You get the freezes just coming up short, or is it going to be the 5-0 Jake Ymir, right? It giveth and it taketh away. And this is our first look at Jake Ymir in Season 9. Again, luckily, the weight probably not on Awesome Jake, but you want to put your best foot forward. And I like the way Veneno approached that pregame interview as well, where, it's a team, and we talked about it already, Gore, that you had good regular season win streaks, but your tournament play wasn't always fantastic. Yep. And so you've got an opportunity at the literal start of the year to warm up the tournament wheels a little bit, get the tires warmed up going into season.
It feels like no matter what, that has to be the case for one team, right? Because in Season 7, that was the Leviathans. They were, regular season, they're just absolutely beating down anybody. Yeah. Oh, wait, tournaments? Okay, first rounded. Until until this last 2 lands, maybe 3, they really didn't get that far. They made it through the semis for the first time in Phase 2 last year. So that was a big deal for them, whereas the Bolts, like you said, are in that kind of similar position where all of a sudden it's all right, so if you're following the same trajectory, then I've got great end of the year news for the Bolts right now. They're going to be winning it all.
I don't know, Goran. This is more of a zoomed out look at Season 9 because Fido K hasn't given us a chance to talk about real gameplay at all in the first 10 seconds.
I talked about some gameplay. It was all theoretical gameplay, I guess, so it wasn't real gameplay.
They've walked up to the green buff. Congrats. And so we'll have to take a break before we get into gameplay. Game number 1 between the Bolts and the Dragons resumes shortly. There's the shortest pause of all time, and we are into game number 1 between the Bolts.
You weren't kidding when you said quick Dragons. Break. It was lightning fast because Bolts. I'm sorry.
Man.
Oh,
God. Oh, that hurt. Matthew, that was pretty spot on.
You know what's even better when afterward you explain the joke? That's what makes it really funny.
Yeah, right. When you have to lay it out there for everyone, it makes it a little bit of there's a little extra oomph on it. But let's get in, Gore. Please, let's get our feet underneath us a little bit here. Olympus Bolts versus the Jade Dragons. Game number 1. Our first look at these two teams in Season 9 of competitive Smite. And Lasbra, not only the duo lane, fun for the Olympus Bolts score, but take a look at this jungle. This is a classic pick for Stanford Soccer and the Hun Bats. Lasbra on the Cabrakan. You got Blink. You got Flat Pen early. Need to see him active.
And you know what? I'm really excited to watch it. This might be the easiest Heartward Amulet build. I think early on, you got to look at the mid 3v3 because that's where a lot of conversation is. I think this Cabrakan, before those items are online, is going to be able to get a lot of extra pressure. And that's something that I look forward to seeing what Lasbra is going to be able to do with it. You can already see him getting a little bit aggressive in the mid lane. Same thing happened over there in duo. But when I look and I see, okay, so there's a Cabrakan, there's a Morgan Le Fay, there's a Ymir. If I'm if I'm Mike, I know, okay, cool. Magic Prots, first things first, then we'll start to figure things out after that. And we've already seen earlier what Shinto had said. I think being able to be a little more tanky on some of these mages, specifically the E-set, since we already saw her last year getting kind of shuffled over to support, opens up this conversation even better for Mike to be able to perform and hit that late game tank status. Maybe not as tanky as Ymir's going to be, but still enough that you're not just going to get shredded the minute you show up. And so I hope to see some of that, after a little bit of farm.
Yeah, agreed. Solo lane matchup. Interesting as well in this one, Gore. Achilles for Fine OK, and Haddock's taking a note out of the playbook of some of the SCC teams that we've seen as of late. And the Oni Warriors, of course, during that SPL qualifier tournament, you throw Bastet or some other assassin-y type over in the solo lane and just build them like you would an assassin. And Haddock's the one doing it now. With the Kleedna over in the solo lane, Looks like a little lifesteal to start off on that lane. Bluestone Pendant. Should be some damage there for the Bolts.
And again, I think it's perfect balance, right? Because if you look at it, Jake and Lasber are going to be really tanky just by merits of Guardian. Lasber doesn't even have to build that tanky. He could throw like one prot item on, even like halfway through the build, and he'll be fine. Kleedna can kind of lean heavily into that damage, maybe go a prot item if you find yourself in a lot of trouble, but like you had mentioned, I know we saw Ducky do it, we've seen, as you mentioned, in the SEC and during the SBL play-ins, this pickup of what this Kleedna is capable of, and during those rotations, especially if they can just get the farm that Solo gets, all of a sudden you've got this really big impact of someone who can walk through walls, show up around a team fight, and just body the backline. And if you're looking at somebody who's going to be able to get there, it's the one person who doesn't have to worry about Lasber's walls, or sorry, doesn't have to worry about, like CC from Sam, doesn't have to worry about like stuns from Mike. They can just walk at them through the map and decide to cut them off. So I think that Haddox is going to be a big player. And we saw what he could do last year. I'm really excited now that it's no longer his rookie year, what Haddox is going to offer on this pick.
Yeah, Haddox, an incredible season in Season 8 for the solo laner. Did not look like a rookie for much of that year at all. Yeah, Corey, it feels like...
If even a single game, I'd be surprised, honestly.
Right. I mean, there were times when Haddox was the one dragging that team, dragging this team forward. There were times when the rookie was the one looking like a veteran. And that's a strong point for the Olympus Bolts to have moving into Season 9. Soul Eater is going to be the first item for Haddox. Stack that up, and a nice stat stick early in this game. So the Jade Dragons, Gore, do have a new player in their roster as well with Pagon. Yep. And so early synergy ends up being a topic of conversation. Again, this tournament, good for establishing a baseline, getting some live practice with some of these new rosters, working out issues with old rosters. And so that's why this week and this weekend, should the Jade Dragons move on, the synergy between these two, Sanford Soccer and Pagon, ends up being where my eyes go and something I'm interested in seeing build up throughout the week.
And it gets really intriguing to me as time goes on. First off, that's a good blue buff steal. Just needs to be mentioned from Haddox. But it's as this week goes on, and realistically as the season goes on, I'm curious as to how Pagon's going to perform. Not because of a lack of faith in Pagon. In fact, if anything, I remember last year rumblings of Pagon being somebody who could join the league. Right?
Yeah.
People have been looking at this guy for a while, and they're phenomenal when it comes down to mid lane play. But the question is, as a mid laner for the Dragons, that seems to be the hard role to fill, right? Go back a couple of years, Twig, pretty solid when it comes down to mid lane, fits the style I think the Dragons needed, but didn't quite always get the, a lot of credit, right? He was playing setup. Herwind, I think a fantastic mid laner, but last year, you kind of have to fill that facilitator role. You're not necessarily played as the carry. And in some metas, we've seen the mid laners be the guy that has to carry. And sometimes that works in favor of the Dragons, sometimes it doesn't because they like to funnel through Sam, through Fine, through Panda. And so how Pagon meshes with this team is, I think, actually an overarching season discussion, because sometimes I think Pagon's absolutely going to be able to pop off, but I'm wondering how well the Dragons' play style with mid is going to fully connect.
Well, Gore, it's been an uncharacteristically slow start for both of these teams. Jade Dragons love getting aggressive early. Olympus Bolts, awesome Jade. Cough, love doing so as well. And here's your first fighting, and the Jade Dragons, one's coming out on top. Polar Bear Mike, alongside the rest of the Jade Dragons, except Fine OK, put down first blood here in Game 1.
Did you need 3 ults for it? Maybe not, but they dropped 3 ults for it anyway. A Circle of Protection, a Fear No Evil, 2 that are huge around objectives and huge around team fights, but you don't need them early on, right? There's not going to be a huge team objective, team fight, anything like that going on, except maybe a Gold Fury, and we don't see most of those before 10 minutes anyway. And then you have Pagon dropping down the Minotaur as well. It's a lot of good damage. It's an unfortunate spot to get caught out. If you're Lasber here, not only is that a huge chunk of CC, maybe you don't have to worry about it, but he doesn't have beats. So the next time those combos come up, they can run it again. And then the next time it comes up until he lets level 12, they can run it again. They've got at least 2 to 3 ult cycles on the Dragons that Lasber is going to be easily susceptible to that. And as you saw, I mean, Kabrakan, he's a Guardian, but he's not that tanky right now, and if he falls too far behind Sam, we were just talking about it, but they play through Sam a lot in the Swinbats. If he gets the farm and gets a lead, that becomes really deadly.
And Goro, we're still at the point in the year where all of the anecdotes we have on some of these individual picks are from the SPL play-in tournament, from the SEC qualifiers, and so I think like the last couple Kabrak and Jungle games I've seen, in how yes or no, 1 or 0 those games have been.
Yes.
I've Kabrak and Jungle going 0-5 or 5-0 is not unheard of, and so a early death for Lasbra, not backbreaking in the sense of the entirety of Smite, but doesn't establish the early momentum that you want this style of pick to end up grabbing. Does end up establishing some good momentum for the Jade Dragons, and gives Mike a good footing on the early part of this game. Barracuda into the Transcendence here, Goremizer. So the Olympus Bolts have already stacked up one of those stacking items, so Leader working on the next with the Gauntlet of Thebes, and Barracuda with the third stacking item for this Bolts draft. Gonna need a little bit of time to get some of that extra power on.
At least he's matching up with Panda Cat, right? Like, they both have Transcendence.
They both have Transcendence.
For him, he's at least in a good spot.
And he's ahead by 5 whole stacks.
And you know what? He's going to keep pushing. I think that limit is fine. Okay, a little bit of poke thrown his way. But I like this. I mean, both the Uller and the Scotty are pretty ability-based, so it's not too surprising to see them go for a kind of a different build than what we've seen elsewhere. Plus, some of the other items that we see, really show off on some of the others, the Crusher comes to mind, things like that, still work well on them. So I think watching them as they go along, specifically watching Barra, because this Scotty, I think, has a little more question marks around her than an Uller does, it's going to be, fun to watch how that fully shakes out. What I'm really excited about, and I can watch as Jake runs around, is the Heartward Amulet getting picked up. I called for it earlier, and I was like really, really banking that Mike was going to go for it. But because, again, it's just so much physical damage, he's also already upgraded the shell. And so he funnels all that gold in there. And because we didn't see a lot of like hyper early aggression, as you had highlighted from Jake, really, you've given Mike the opportunity to now have a good counter build for the 3v3, at least to make him and his teammates tankier, and a way to deal with the walls.
Yeah, I think that's like the easiest Phantom Shell purchase ever. In Smite, right? Yes. Maybe Haddix on Odin instead is probably a little bit easier.
Haddix on Odin, and then somehow if you could work Yamoja into the combo.
Right. Ymir or Yamoja mid? Which would you rather have?
I'd rather have Ymir mid.
All right, and then Yamoja support might be the most Wally type composition you could have. Here's a wall from Awesome. Jake catches PBM out. Would love that Phantom Shell right about now. Doesn't end up needing it because the return is here, and Lasbra drops for the second kill this game. The Jade Dragon starting to swing, and unfortunately it is Lasbra who falls yet again. It's an 0-2 start for the Kabrakan jungle.
And again, it just comes down to where is their damage coming from. As long as Mike is alive, first off, Circle of Protection does a ton of work in keeping people alive, getting a good heal for them. But whenever he's alive, you've got this aura that's making all of these otherwise still tanky targets. I mean, Tiamat already tanky, Hunbat's maybe not necessarily tanky, but at least good at surviving. All of a sudden, they're taking less damage from this Heartward, or because of this Heartward. And so you're really creating a problem if Veneno and Lasbra are the only two who are in the area to do a lot of the damage. So you need, Barra or Haddix to get more aggressive with you in scenarios like that. But even better for the Dragons is now the 1.5 level lead that they have over Lasbra for Sam. Just ticked over to 10 for Lasbra, has already gone up into the helm, feels pretty solid, like where he's going to go with this build.
Yep.
But they've got at least one more ult cycle before he hits level 12 that they're going to be able to potentially put some pressure on him. He needs to get that pickup in the farm game going a lot faster.
Gore, I was wondering if we would see a 1v1 just now, and when I look at the items, that would have been a bad idea for Barracuda. He's got a lot of gold to go back and spend, I imagine, but in lane as of right now, he has a full Hydra's Lament behind Cat. I don't believe that's a 1v1 that Barra was all excited about taking. So yes, goes back, completely buys a Crusher. And a upgraded Aegis. So back to lane. Barracuda will go a little bit more even, but Hydra's plus fully stacked Transcendence score. Panda Cat is in a spot now where that damage is going to be sticking. And you look at maybe some itemized defense towards that because it's a unique build, something we haven't often seen in the Hunter role up to this point. And Hydra's plus Transcendence on an Uller is going to pack a punch.
Very specifically because he has the Hydra's. Like, to me, this is a build of Panda Cat wanting to 1v1. Like, he wants to fight Barra. Because, like, Transcendence, now you finally got the mana to throw out your abilities. Lasbra is just getting cut out.
He's going to go 0-3. Yes, he is. Pagon gets his first SPL kill of the year, and it's on to Lasbra for the third kill of the game for the Jade Dragons. And Gore, every once in a while, as casters, we set up a storyline, and it just kind of comes true before our eyes, and it just feels so good. And here's the next of that, and it's the immense damage that Panda Cat's going to do. Aegis out for Bera, and will the dog get it done? No, the shell is out, and that one one a lot closer than I thought it was going to end up being. Barracuda nearly flips it around. Panda Cat didn't even have Aegis. That would have been a big difference maker in this fight. Didn't use the beads either. And Barracuda will live, so will Panda Cat. Unfortunately, though, Lasbra's fallen for the third time this game earlier on in that fight.
All it would have taken is if Pagon was a little more selfish. That's an Aegis, not a shell. Panda Cat does. That is a huge play from Pagon for the rotation and the save to make sure it happens. And again, I'll talk about this because they're going to be auto attack. They've got 2 shells. I just saw Nemean get popped by Mike, so I really want to crack into that. But realistically, I think that this is like not only a great showcase for the start of Pagon, but a good showcase of what that duo lane is going to be, because you get the kind of the crack opening that is, Panda Cat just smacking down immediately the damage you're going to get from a hi-rez, but you get the kill, and you see it right there. I mean, that is a massive health gap. But Calder does a little bit of work, and the shell helps alleviate a little bit. I think Panda gets, again, that initial hi-rez proc, that really hard hit at the beginning, and then the sustained damage from Scotty was a little too much to overcome. So I really like the presence of mind that the Bera has to be able to keep that fight going. And, of course, the presence of mind Bera has to get out of there before the team shows
correct.
up.
Smart for Bera, who does not have his actives for another minute and a half or so. Panda Cat has beads and Aegis. Going into this Gold Fury fight, Jade Dragons have pulled it and gotten it down to half HP. Awesome Jake, haven't seen much from the Ymir just yet. You'll need him in this fight, though, as Veneno eats the stuns. Wall go down, Fear No Evil is good, separates out the engagement as the Olympus bolts spreading over by the red buff. Panda Cat is alone in the backline, dodging out a lot of the damage that Ven has been throwing out. PBM doing his best to peel for his ADC, but it does not matter. Ven rotates over. Double kill on some questionable positioning gives the bolts an advantage.
I'm going to be honest with you. I was not watching why Panda Cat jumped in there. There was a lot more going on at the forefront, so how he ended up there, well, that's going to be a huge question mark. That is just not the spot you want to be. You're alone. Maybe there's a miscommunication as to where they're going to be going in, jumps a little too far, or maybe he's looping around for the back of that Fear No Evil. Either way, wildly out of position by the time the fight keeps going, and what was a Gold Fury feint from the Dragons turns into an easy pickup for the Bolts. And that's, looking at cooldowns. Pagon didn't have that shell back. That's really helpful against this team because there's a lot of auto attackers on the Bolts. You get the shell from Mike, but it feels like, again, a very disjointed fight from them, and so not able to get as aggressive. He's got an Nemean as well. A lot of survivability built into this team for auto attackers, and it just unfortunately didn't line up the way they needed it to when the fight finally happens. I think it's a good engage, and then just some questionable, positioning afterward from the Dragons to really, they put the bolts right back into this. I mean, Lasbra didn't even have his beads for that fight. Now he's got them. Now they're going to be able to put more pressure on the map.
Big gold swing core as the Pyromancer will drop as well. Should be right around a 2,000 gold lead. Just above it, 3,000 experience as well. And so it was a slower start and still low, relatively low in kills between these two teams. I'm thinking we're going to have lane fighting. I'm thinking junglers are going to be in lanes causing chaos. We got 5 kills to show for it.
You got to remember, these two teams have the record for the lowest kills set in an SPL game.
Do they really?
4. It was a 4-0.
No kidding. I would never. Okay. I'm trying to think of teams. If you told me which 2 teams had the lowest, like which matchup, which SPL matchup has the lowest kills, I actually think this would have been my last.
Yes,
this would have been my last guess. I think these 2 teams in my mind are the fastest paced and the highest
supposed to be,
teams.
yeah.
So the fact that that they have the record for the lowest, baffling to me. But I got to remember history in moments like this.
4 kills, and every single one of them was on the Dragons.
Maybe it's against other teams. They're really good at being aggressive and catching teams off guard. But against one another, they don't want to be the team to flinch early on.
Well, because they both snowball pretty well, right? Like that's like the style that they tend to play with, especially the Dragons. I mean, that was something they were known for a while. Was like if they get ahead in the first 5 minutes, the game might as well be over because 15 minutes from now they're going to be killing your Titan. And so you don't want to go too aggressive against them, because what happens if you do make that misstep, all of a sudden they've got this massive lead. It just gets a little shaky. But I like where the Bolts are at. Again, like you said, 5 kills, 17 minutes, maybe not like the most thrilling team fight action that has really been able to peak, but realistically, the Bolts get a massive team fight that goes in their favor. It gives them the first, I want to say, substantial, large gold lead for the game. And now they're starting to trudge a little further forward. They're willing to get aggressive. Unfortunately, I think this is the second obelisk in a row that they haven't been able to pick up, maybe the third. And now we're in this position where the Dragons still have a lot of capabilities. I mean, look at their relics right now. They're all up. Look at their ults. They're all ready. All it takes is a misstep from the Bolts, and you can lose that gold lead really fast.
A whole lot gets missed over on the left side of the map. As Awesome Jake takes a stun and a silence, but that is a tanky Ymir. At this point, Lasbra desperately searching for a stun, will get it. But a Fear No Evil from Sanford Soccer answers back at the beginning of this fight. How about that rotation in from Haddix? Evaporates Sanford Soccer, and a great ultimate from Lasbra, and the turnaround has begun, and it is here. The Kabrakan jungle 0-3 no longer. Add a few assists and a kill to boot.
And again, just look at the build that Lasbra's gone for, right? So realistically, what he did was early on, he was the lightning rod, and he wasn't really well protected during that. And so he got struck by what?
You were about to do it again?
That one was unintentional. It was completely unintentional.
Did I cut you off and you were about to say you got struck by what, Gore? What did he get struck?
I was going to say he was struck by lightning, but then he got struck
been a long
down.
Off-season. It's been a long off season, yes.
But now he's got some prots, and he's more protected, so he can.
I just took the wind out of your sails. I'm sorry. We're 18 minutes into our first.
He don't die as easily now. That's what I'm saying.
Gore, I'm so sorry. We're 18 and a half minutes into our first Pro League cast of the year, and I've taken the win.
I legitimately did not mean to do that second one.
I've taken the light out of your eyes.
The first one was intentional.
Does this happen with Katie a lot? Like you're at home and you make jokes
all
like
the time.
that,
She does not appreciate my humor anymore. You know what? I'm hard pressed to believe she ever did, but I think part of that is 8 years of being jaded, right?
Right.
After a while, she's just done with it.
Well, the rest of the league has been jaded by the Dragons only for a couple years now. Zing, that's mine for this set. Thank you very much. Olympus Bolts were getting jaded early in this set, or this game rather.
That's your two.
I guess, and this set. Yeah, one more at some point in comedy in threes. The Olympus Bolts have turned this game around, though. 19 minutes in, find themselves handedly in the lead of the Jade Dragons. 4,000 gold. Couple towers go down. Open Phoenix on left and open lane in mid. As Polar Bear Mike is knocked up and shut down by the Olympus Bolts. There's just too much CC, too much individual instances of CC Gore for Mike to be able to live through that.
And we talk about, again, relic timers being important. That shell had 20 seconds before he comes back.
Unlucky.
20 seconds from now, and Mike is able to at least walk away towards his team. Now, nope, just a free kill for them. The Frenzy has been picked up, though, here for Mike. And so, again, I'm looking at this team as someone who can get aggressive in the next couple of team fights, right? You've got Circle of Protection. Theoretically, you're going to be great in team fights. But they haven't been able to get it full strength. I mean, every time the first big one we see, they're widely separated. Second time we see one, unfortunately, they're just easy pickoffs overall. I mean, even now, there's not a chance for a team fight because by the time the rest of the team is there, two people, one person has already been burned down. So the Bolts are doing a really good job with these walls. I mean, I thought they were going to come into play a lot earlier. And then because we saw the Phantom Shell, I thought they were going to fall off a lot faster. But instead, it's been pretty much the inverse of that. They didn't make a difference early on. And it wasn't until the shell was built that they really started making the big impact plays.
I imagine we'll see Phantom Shell for Pagon at some point upgraded as well. And so a bit of a timer for the Olympus Bolts, because once Pagon is able to Phantom Shell himself and likely Panda Cat, since both the carries will be in a very similar spot to one another, that could free up Mike to operate elsewhere in these fights. So double Phantom Shell, a nice little power spike for the Jade Dragons whenever that does end up rolling around here. But the Olympus Bolts, if they're able to keep their foot on the gas, which they want to do around this Pyromancer, they're in a good spot. Awesome Jake has now picked up Oni Hunter's Garb, not something that I'm used to seeing. I'm not used to seeing that red bit of armor, Gore, in the item slots anywhere, but Awesome Jake has picked it up here. And you look at power spikes, Rod of Tahuti for Lasbra completed. Now Soul Reaver plus Obshard for Ven plus Charon's Coin. Percent Pen, huge. And so all of these big power spike items score big for the Bolts.
I love owning Hunter's Garb. I'm actually glad you brought it up because this is one of my favorites to build because not only do you get CCR, which is that's maybe the biggest stat against this team.
20%'s a good bit.
But you
too.
also get a lot of damage mitigation as well as in this slot because he needed it at this point in his build, some magical procs and some health already. So realistically, every single number that you see in front of you is beneficial here for Jake. But the CCR against Hunbats, against Tiamat, against Achilles, against an Uller, against an Iset, that just pays off so much in terms of dividends as the game goes on. But then getting those mitigations, the more people that are around you, all of a sudden you have to start looking at the range. Like Iset has some decent range, but for wind gust and things like that, you do have to get a little bit closer, and Mike's probably going to be at the front of the fight. Panda Cat has range, but then you've got Achilles, you've got Hunbats. A lot of people that are going to be getting close to you, giving those mitigations and making it a lot easier for Jake to just kind of withstand all sorts of damage being thrown his way. And when you're Ymir and running at people, that's like one of the best things you can have going for you.
I think that's just like a Jake item. Regardless of Ymir, I think Jake should just build Oni.
He should just always have it.
Just always have Onis in his back pocket, I think, for awesome. Jake, Fire Giant pulled by the Olympus Bolts as the Jade Dragons will fight into this objective at a pretty hefty deficit. Lasbra wailing those arms around, looking for the stun. Won't end up getting it. Had Blank
Stand
chose
by
not
it. Worst
to use
feeling in Smite.
I tend to agree, Gore. I tend to agree. Missing constantly the stuns on Kabrakan. Close to the worst feeling, if not the worst feeling in Smite. Ven, I didn't see what chunked him down to half HP, but that's a we gotta go signal now for the Bolts who back off of the FG.
And this is a good spot. Maybe not a Fire Giant opportunity for the Dragons, but you get a little bit of farm. I'm still looking at Pagon's Relics. When that becomes presumably a Phantom Shell, that's going to be a good leap for them. But any chunk of change that you can take away from the Bolts is going to be a big deal. So being able to get the tier 1 in right, the tier 1 in mid, those are huge openings for them all of a sudden, especially when you consider 3 towers are missing now for the Dragons. All of a sudden, you not only need that gold because of the economy, you need that gold because you need the map state to be a little more equal. And so you really have to consider those. You have to consider relic timers, and I think if Pagon is able to get the farm necessary to feel confident, upgrades his starter here instead of the relic, that's going to be a huge thing for the fight.
Luckily, Fine OK is real tanky, and so a lot of stuns and damage connecting on the Fino ends up just being an ultimate out with the Fatal Strike. Tier 1 on right goes down for the Bolts. Another decent wall from Lasbra.
Oh, wow.
Phantom Shell used by Mike, and there is no Phantom Shell upgrade yet from Pagon. And so Gore for 2 minutes now. Double wall between Jake and Lasbra. A big threat to the Jade Dragons.
I think this is the opening, right? I mean, if you wanted to start up a Fire Giant, if you wanted to really make the play for it, I think this might be your best time to start a fight. Unless you're going to get good walls like that from Jake where he can really kick things off.
Whoa.
All of a sudden you lock down everybody.
That's a big wall from Lasbra in the back. 3 members of the Jade Dragons locked in place, but Lasbra and Sanford Soccer, Haddix rather, and Sanford Soccer on the left, brawling out with one another. But how about this damage from Barracuda? All of it connecting onto Mike. And Ven deals the final blow. Haddix will get taken down in trade, but awesome Jake walking forward, getting max value out of his Oni Hunter's Garb. Veneno has taken a lot of damage from Panda Cat, though, on the other side of this fight. Both teams fighting with 4. Lower health, though, on awesome Jake, and he will not get into the ultimate. As Fine OK has executed him down. The Jade Dragons at a massive gold deficit have fought back into this fight, and they will deicide the Olympus Bolts.
It almost bait themselves. Lasbra gets a huge wall. 3 people in there. No follow-up. By the time they finally get the damage there, the Dragons are surging forward. They wanted the fight at that point, and it becomes a huge deal. Relics get used. Beads were down for Veneno because of the last time he got poked out, so all of a sudden, he's not able to get any of that immunity necessary. Now they're back up, but it's a little too late for that. Damage bonuses that come out for the Dragons because of their last back really assist them throughout that fight, but it is the isolation. It's pulling Haddix away from the fight and limiting the damage down. Again, as long as Mike was around, that Heartward's doing a little bit of work. Maybe not as much as it was early on, but Bear is the only person who was engaged for the majority of that, dealing a lot of damage. He gets some good ones out, and then unfortunately is one step too far, falls down, and it becomes an easy resurgence for the rest of the Dragons. And of course, I think real MVP has to be shouted out. Fine OK's Assassinate, being able to just completely execute anybody and everybody that was standing there. I mean, otherwise that's maybe 2 more seconds you have to spend killing Jake, a few more seconds you have to spend killing Lasbra. Being able to just execute them, get them off the board, this Achilles opened up some opportunities for them to really snowball that fight into their favor.
You know, Gore, when these two teams have matched up in the past, and they have matched up a lot in the past, it's just about Bolts and Dragons. Feels like in a lot of these tournaments, they end up going up against one another. We've seen very snowbally games one way or another. Whether now, outside of that 4-kill, you know, very slow game that we've seen between these two teams. Snowbally sets, I should say. What a back and forth game. We've gotten game one between the Bolts and the Jade Dragons. Both teams have held at least a 2,000 or 3,000 gold lead at points, and both teams have come back from that deficit. Now we are right back to even, and the Jade Dragons a good chance at controlling the rest of this game and grabbing a game 1 win if the rest of this siege is able to go cleanly. Haddix finds a little bit of damage into the front line of the Jade Dragons, but probably took more damage in the wall than he dealt.
You got to watch Jake, and this is exactly what I was going to talk about.
Wow.
Walls like this seem, you know, almost silly if you look at them from one perspective, but when you realize he's blocking autos and how long that wall stands up, I mean, depending on the level of it, like, you know, up to, well, I think 5 seconds at max, like, it lasts so long in game that it just blocks him down. It slowed down a lot of this fire giant.
That's good damage from Fine. Okay, Fear No Evil onto the back. That's got Barracuda running towards the Jade Dragons, but he's able to shrug it off. Both actives now down for the Scotty. Half HP missing from the Phoenix. Minute and 45 left on the FG buff.
And this is where, again, those small little timers can make a big difference if Jake decides to play it properly. Good wall can also isolate him. But they've got 2 Phantoms. That might not work well.
Haddix walks into a stun, and it's Polar Bear Mike dealing the damage. Shell on out, but Veneno's got the range. And Polar Bear Mike, the first casualty of this fight. The defense looks all right for the Olympus Bolts for now. Half HP on every one of the Jade Dragons, and here's your fight back from the Bolts. Nothing's easy in this game. Double kill for Veneno. Save for Sakura and Panicat, the last 2 alive.
They're still going for the chase, too. And honestly, Haddix might be able to close the gap again, walk through walls if necessary. And that's going to be able to make it maybe a little bit easier, not having to go through some of those turns. Yeah, but this is where things get, again, a little awkward. Do you bite off more than you can chew? With 30 seconds left, let's say 20, because PBM's going to come back, you should be able to poke down the Phoenix.
We're about to go for an hour.
This is where things get really timid for me.
Maybe actually, right?
Jake, do you go for this?
I mean, Phoenix, sure.
Yeah.
It's fine, okay.
You don't win.
Yeah, you don't win the game. I mean, if you can really stagger
still
these
feels
2
risky.
out, I don't know if you try to defend if you're Sanford Sakura and Panicat. Maybe you do, because you can delete Barracuda and Sanford Sakura on his flank in behind. And now we leave. That is a lot of damage that Barra did not have the actives to deal with. And now there's no threat of Phoenix or the game ending.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think if Barra, unless his Aegis is going to last like 6 seconds, I don't know. I don't know if that's still going to help him there. The beads would have maybe been helpful, but that's that hi-rez proc, right? I mean, you get the hard CC into a huge smack from Sam. That's where things get a little shaky. The good news is, again, you know, you watch this around. It's essentially an even game after this next 5 seconds, right? 2 fire giant buffs disappear.
Gore literally
You're pretty much right back to,
map state is even
neutral. And it's only because they defend that left side Phoenix. I mean, that is brilliant from the Bolts to be able to body away from that Phoenix and then to push forward. There was a certain point where it felt like it was, you know, you were either full committing or you were falling back. They full committed. But now they have to wait. You know, Bear's going to have his relics back. It's looking like a really good and promising team fight for the Bolts by the time the FG's back. Every relic should be up for them. Meanwhile, you're going to be missing beats from Sam for sure. And they're going to be, depending on how quickly they get engaged, Fine OK Pagon probably going to be missing theirs. Panicat will have like just gotten them back unless things kick off way too quickly. And so this is like a good spot for the Bolts to be in, knowing that they have an advantage, at least for the next like 20 seconds, to really press forward into the Dragons and cause them a lot of trouble.
Really hoping to see something out of the Scorching Blink rune that Lasbro's just picked up. Gore, I think that's one of my favorite.
Oh, wow.
It's one of my favorite relic upgrades just in all of Smite now. First of all,
it's a fun
let me just vocalize that I love the change. Changes to relics, like the fact that there's these upgrade trees now. You can really uniquely adapt your gameplay later in the game. The fact that there's just more choices to be made, I love. And Scorching Blink ends up being one of my favorites, and I want to see big value out of it. Is it SpongeBob where there's an episode where he's like scooting along the ground and leaves like a trail of fire behind him or something like that? I don't know why that comes to mind. But that's what I'm thinking of. I'm going to call it the SpongeBob Blink for the rest of this year if we see some good value out of it. Awesome Jake throws up the wall, but doesn't get the stun.
I like, again, the damage it can do. If you're Lasbro here, and you blink, let's say if you get Panicat in your sights, you can blink to the other side of Panicat, turn and stun. Panda Cat's dead. If his beads and Aegis come up, maybe he survives it, but like realistically, it is a really easy commit for Lasbro to be able to get good damage out, and not necessarily for free, right? You're gonna have to put yourself in an awkward position, and he's got just the right kind of build where he can deal good damage and survive for a little while. But it is going to be fun to watch how he can use that one, especially considering how aggressive he can be with it and the pressure that he's going to be able to put out. The problem is again, how you use that blink, because like. It's going to leave that trail behind. He's got it. Oh my god, no! Oh no!
Not on the Primal Fury's huge! What does this mean, though? Like, seriously, what are implications here? Panda Cat's
That's a
dead
fire
for a
giant!
minute.
Oh
Now the Olympus
no!
Bolts walk into the right side of the map with a one-man advantage, and Panda Cat's huge. I mean, look at the items Panda Cat has. That is a massive impact that is now off the map. The gift that keeps on giving is Pro Smite Gore, and we get a Fury kill onto Panda Cat in game number 1 between the Jade Dragons and the Olympus Bolts, the 3rd competitive Pro Smite game we've gotten this year, and Panda Cat has died to the Fury, and that's given the Bolts some legs to walk forward. Unable to finish off any kills. Now Sanford Soccer in on the 3-man Fear No Evil, but he is alone.
That's huge.
And now he's dead for a minute.
I mean, my brain is melted, man. Okay, yeah, no. I mean, this, again, it becomes a free fire giant.
That's enhanced too, oh no.
I don't know who is more certain of Panda Cat in that scenario, him or me, because I did not think he was going to die, and obviously he didn't think he was going to die.
First of all, Doug, let me round of applause to Doug on that one, because everyone is over on the right side of the map. The wherewithal to go over to Panda Cat and then zoom in perfectly. And that's and Billy on the replays were nuts. We're coming out swinging at the start of this year.
All right, so watch. I hope it'll show up on the bar, but like when the debuff hits, that's really where it is. And you can see the effects on him. He's taking chunks of damage there, and that's if you're ever wondering the proper time to really like balance away before you get hit with that. That's when you leash it to your tank, because you want to make sure that you're not getting smacked with that if you're a carry. And then they staggered out Sam. He was gone for another minute, man. That was the freest fire giant in the world.
Look how changed this game is now. You lost Enhanced Fire Giant. The right side Phoenix has got another swing. How long has it been since you've been to Six Flags, Score, here in Georgia? The roller coaster theme park, for those of you unfamiliar.
Senior year high school.
Have you ridden the Goliath?
A decade.
Have you ridden the Goliath?
Is that the one that has the 70-meter drop?
Yeah, the huge one. Doug, if you could bring up the golden XP charts, because it really is feeling like
oh my god, that is exactly what the roller coaster is.
Right. in both directions, too. That steep drop-off at 25 minutes down towards the Jade Dragons is the same height that you also climb up at the beginning of the roller coaster, and it feels like we've been on a roller coaster literally throughout this game. And the Jade Dragons are going to pull the Primal Fury while an Enhanced Fire Giant buffed up Olympus Bolts walk into the left side of the map. Will a Fury give over the game and the Enhanced Fire Giant a moment ago to the Olympus Bolts? The Jade Dragons this time able to disengage, but Lasbro blinks forward, drops the wall in the back. The double wall is kept fine, okay, right where he is.
It's a lot of relics used for the
Jade Dragons will
disengage.
live. Yep.
It's a lot of relics, and specifically, only one Phantom Shell, so maybe that's the benefit. But you lose your Frenzy, you lose beads that are picked up there from Pagon. It becomes a lot easier. You don't have to worry about your minions. You had mentioned it, but this is Enhanced Fire Giant. Panda Cat's Revenge Tour on the Primal Fury doesn't seem to be going well for him.
Whoa, Sanford Soccer silenced out as Haddix nearly wins the 1v1. Awesome Jake tosses up the wall over on left. That's going to put Panda Cat in a spot. Find some damage onto the frontliners. Left side Phoenix now gone as well as fire minions tickle a little bit of damage into the Titan. And the Olympus Bolts now Gore right back in control of this game.
This Primal Fury is cursed. I think I leave it.
That's what I
If I'm the Bolts, I leave it up for the Dragons to go against.
I thought the Jade Dragons were about to lose the game pulling that Primal Fury while the Olympus Bolts walked forward. I thought that was going to be the game.
Yeah,
but
you don't want to lose on your Revenge Tour.
No, you should.
Panda Cat has a vendetta right now against that specific objective.
That's right. This is Panda Cat's Revenge Tour throughout the rest of the year. Haddix has just been obnoxious, making such good use of the walls around these Phoenix sieges. Fear No Evil from Sanford Soccer. What does it get? Nothing but death as Veneno on a killing spree. 3-man stun on the other end, but Lasbro will answer back with a kill on a Pagon. Mid lane, Phoenix is an afterthought. And so are the rest of the Jade Dragons. Olympus bolts as 5, complete the turnaround, and in 36 minutes, take game 1.
In a game as back and forth as this one, it's not often that you end up in a position where you can say, all right, so where is the moment where things went wrong? This one, it's pretty damn cut and dry.
It wasn't for a while,
No,
and then it was.
for like 30 minutes of this game, it's back and forth. No one knows who's going to win. You got a Fire Giant, you're assaulting a Phoenix, doesn't mean anything. All of a sudden, you get one line, very, very bold, full font, like just context.
Here.
This is where things changed for you. And you got to think, I mean, Panda Cat gets that primal. You've got a full Dragons team. He backs, right? Heals up, comes in. Full Dragons team, an easier Fire Giant for them to be able to kill off because he got the primal, and a 5-man fight. Now, maybe when he gets it, the bolts get aggressive anyway, and they can find a pick in a fight that's a 5v4. But worst case scenario, you still have backup on the way.
Right.
He falls, then it gets a stagger kill. And then they go for another Primal Fury. That, you know what? Honestly, they needed something to get him back in, and I like that they showed some poise there, but it just crumbled. I mean, I've never seen a game go from, oh man, this is so intense back and forth, to, oh no. That
Right,
quick.
it kind of undercuts
Like,
the
oh my
tone, doesn't
God.
it? I'm like losing my mind laughing. I can't
Oh.
believe it. Who would have thought? I wouldn't have guessed that one set in, we are in our second set of competitive Smite of Pro League competitive Smite of the
Yeah.
year. We've already got a jungle kill.
We had like
onto one of
a
the players.
single one like all
of
last year.
Unbelievable. That's only game 1 of this set.
Oh,
Game
no.
number 2, the Bolts vs. Dragons coming up next.
I will get there.
giant cake. It's this
Uh-huh.
massive cake.
It is a big cake.
And Handyman decides to just smash a Ymir underneath right in the center of it.
And apparently I put on too many sprinkles?
You
Like,
did put on a
Okay.
you put on an obscene amount of
Relax.
sprinkles, Mifflin.
They bought a bucket, man. I'm going to use it. You know what I mean?
Spread it evenly through a cake. You have a giant pile of
I'm
it in the
still,
middle.
I have like over 80% of that bucket of sprinkles left. I'll spread it evenly eventually.
Eventually, when the entire cake is nothing but sprinkles.
That is even.
Team that wishes they could get some cake here in this game, though, is the Dragons. A very tight-knit battle, back and forth throughout the
What a
entirety of the
segue.
game, and then right at the tail end, at that Gold Fury,
Yeah, who was it?
Panda Cat
Uh-huh. What'd
tried
he do?
soloing the Gold Fury,
Uh-huh.
and instead he got soloed by the Gold Fury. And then
what
from
would you call that? Like a throw, maybe?
Probably a throw. I think
Okay.
that would be a solid word
Fair.
to call it there.
I'm
Very
glad
end
you
of
said
it all
it.
here, Mifflin, though. But going back to the beginning of the game, it's back and forth, very low kill count throughout the entirety of the game. I think even at the end, we're only barely at 20 total for the entirety of that game. And starting out here, I mean, Jade Dragons and Bolts have a lot to prove coming in here. You know, you have the Bolts going 3 years with this team. The Dragons bringing up some new talent. We got a good look at both these teams so far for Game 1.
Dude, I was actually very impressed with the Jade Dragons macro play throughout the early portions of this game. Felt like the plan was, hey, where's Lasbro? Let's make sure he isn't having fun. And Lasbro simply did not have fun. I believe it was like an 0-4 start for the Cabrakan just because Hunbots kept ulting him continually. And specifically at that 12-minute mark, Pagon made a rotation to save Panda Cat's life where he drops the shell. Just massive plays there. So if we're concerned about Pagon's ability to play at the SPL level and synergize with his team, that play alone, honestly, it's been a while since I got that hype. That cemented him in my mind that he's going to have a decent transition here to the SPL. But got to give credit where it's due. The Olympus Bolts from the edge and with a godsend, a random windfall in a team fight in the late game of Panda Cat just giving it over. Yeah, Gold Fury MVP for this one. The Olympus Bolts stuck in there the entire time. There was a portion where I really thought the Jade Dragons, they're just in control. They were controlling the defensive positioning around the Fire Giant. They had won out in the majority of team fights up until that point, and then one mistake, stop me if you heard this before, will cost you a game at the SPL level. And that's exactly what happens here.
I mean, at that point, we are 32 minutes in the game. It's a 2,000 gold difference between them. And I think Dolson gave probably the best analogy. It was the Goliath drop of gold and XP that went the opposite way there, and the Bolts were able to bring this one back and take game number 1 here. But I think you're right to highlight, you know, Pagon has been the primary topic for us at the beginning of this set, and it will continue to be our topic throughout the entire early lifespan of the Dragons here in Season 9. And we've been seeing a ton of these shell pickups from these mid laners. It's not something that was typically picked up by mid. You typically go your beads, your Aegis, and then you're done. But over the course of this early portion of Season 9 from SCC now into SPL, we've been seeing Shell kind of bleed its way through as that second right next to a set of beads for these mids.
Shell's just good. Very often you're going to get similar value to Shell, even if you're trading out a little bit more HP, just having that be a defensive relic for your entire team is so impactful. It allows you that path of, okay, well, maybe I pick up a Phantom Shell if I need it. Maybe I pick up like a Hasten Shell and I'm all of a sudden moving faster. Shell is catch-all, I think, probably the best relic in the game besides Beads. Beads is always going to be the best, just the ability to invalidate some play from the other team. Like, oh, you hit your CC? Just kidding. Do it again in like the next minute or so. Maybe I'll get CC'd. Shell, next runner-up. And I think masterful usage from Pagon and something I'm expecting to see a lot more of. That relic is just incredibly strong.
A little bit of happy cheers from the side of the Bolts here, especially from Barracuda, smiling faces across the board as they get ready for game number 2, as they were kind of handed a victory right at the end there of game number 1 by way of the Gold Fury. But it doesn't seem to be gloomy faces anywhere across the board here. Even the Dragons still looking fairly confident. You know, one play, you can get upset about one play, but it's one thing that you don't let linger over your head. I mean, these are early sets in the year. These ones, as previously mentioned, these don't reflect the standings of Phase 1 of the SPL. So while these ones aren't as important in that instance, you do want to, you know, try and put your best foot forward out here, but still happy across the board for these guys, though. Picks and bans for game number 2 between the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons. Winner of the set moves on to face off against the Leviathans. Loser, well, they don't get much. They get to sit back at home and watch as the rest of the teams continue playing on.
Hey, that's nice too. You know, they get to take a little break and save some strategies for the SPL proper once that one starts up. But I'm sure both of these teams would like to move on and get to test themselves against the reigning world champions. I think that as far as picks and bans are concerned, even though the Bolts find a win there, I think they're going to be the ones more concerned about adapting to what the Jade Dragons were doing early on in Game 1, because the Jade Dragons were getting the better end of the majority of that early game. Had they been able to transition it a little bit more solidly into objective play or just not dying to Gold Furies, they probably would have been in a much better position. So, if anything, I think we're going to see the Bolts, specifically around the jungle, probably try and shift up that pick. Lasbra really just got accosted throughout the early.
It was not a fun start of this game for the Bolts jungler here, but as first bans come through, Erlong Shen, Gilgamesh, and Kleena. So that's our first adaptation to what happened during this set, but it's out of the Dragons. But because they're first pick, they're going to go for this Artio, which from Final K, from all of his content out there, has been saying that this is probably one of, if not the best gods to be picking up in this lane right now. And on the opposite side, bans for the Bolts here for the Khepri, Fafnir, and the Raw. But talking about Guardians in the solo, Cthulhu making his way back into the meta here, making a nice little rise for these solo laners.
Yeah, Cthulhu so early on, though. The answer to that likely going to be Nemesis from the other side. That seems to be the generalized answer to that Descent into Madness. Just strip his defense and kill him while he's a massive target. So going towards Cthulhu this early on might open up that door for the Jade Dragons if they decide to take that pathing. J-Mac, I want to ask you a question, though. The Bolts bans, aren't those exactly the bans we saw from the Jade Dragons in Game 1? I feel like that's the exact same.
I think that was actually the ban that the Bolts threw out there.
They copied their own bans.
I believe so.
I flipped them in my head.
You did. They
Thanks.
also flipped sides here in this one, so that's what got you.
That's what got.
That's what got you there.
Thank you for giving me the out, J-Mac.
It
I
had
appreciate
a little
that.
bit of a flip there. Artio Geb, which might be one of the more interesting ones out here because Geb, with his change to the Cataclysm, became the most popular support out there. Now that your Cataclysm can actually kill people instead of just doing a percent of like 5% of their health and not being able to get that killing blow. Plus that, the Stone Shield, always a great ability, I should say, out there. One of the best abilities out there in the game for any support to have. Then he just kind of fell off, and nobody was really playing Geb, but now we're seeing him picked up here a couple along Artio.
Still has the ability to stop Medusa from doing her favorite thing in the lane, which is lacerate into your entire HP bar. Geb can say, hey, yo, Stone Shield, he's not stuck there anymore, and also can at least mitigate, throughout the early portions of the game, at least one of the Viper shots. If you put some points in that Stone Shield, all of a sudden that all-in engagement style for Medusa is going to take a major hit in efficacy. So I like this pick in general, but it's not exactly the style pick that I immediately associate with Polar Bear Mike. When I think of Polar Bear Mike, like Hercules, Fenrir, Yamoja, Atlas, like these things that just get in your face and are super annoying, kind of reminiscent of how Jeff Hinla used to play, just that North American aggressive style of support. Geb more so finds himself in the traditionally European, like IRAF or Godpool, where it's, I'm going to sit back, I'm going to facilitate, I'll wait for that one golden moment, blink in, Cataclysm, open up a team fight, right? It's that eye of the initiator. Geb, a little bit more so a facilitator for his team, but you've already got incredibly strong dive just from Artio alone on the Jade Dragons, which might be why we see PBM say, okay, I'll take a back seat here, I'll let Final K hold that mantle for my squad.
And then you couple that, Geb, with an Uller in the dual lane, so once more Panda Cat gets to run this Hunter back with a rather unconventional start to the build. It was what Transcendence into Hydra's Lament, not something that we see typically out of many Hunters at all. Typically, that's something we only see towards the side of the jungle. And talking about jungle, or solo, or carry, I mean, if we just want to throw it out there and say maybe this Medusa goes mid, Set locked in third here for the Bolts. Not the pick I would have expected third overall.
No. Set, I think, is fine to pick up here, just for keeping people guessing. Like, sure, you could throw Medusa in the mid. You could have Set in the ADC role. You could have him in jungle. You could have him in solo. I think with some of the changes to Berserker's shield, maybe it fits Set a little bit more so in the solo lane. The ability to all-in engage with that ultimate, go in and say, all right, you dropped me low, and now I'm taking 15% less damage overall, and I'm still in your face. Very much stays in line with Set out of the solo lane. With itemization changes, I think that he really can find his home there as well. But I am curious to see where it goes for the Olympus Bolts. Similarly, jungle, I think you could still go for that Berserker shield early on, maybe around third slot instead of first, and still find that value in the team fight phase. But Set is a pick that I agree. I wasn't exactly expecting to see this early, but it's not too much of a head scratcher. He's going to slot in, he's going to flex, and he's going to keep the Jade Dragons guessing in the bans.
Dodgy, Kabrakan, Ymir, no surprise really on these three, specifically the Kabrakan Ymir up against the Bolts for bans from the Dragons. The Hotwa might be the one that sticks out the most here. One small buff to him this patch, and I can't even really say that's a small buff. It was a massive change taking the self-root away from his third ability, so now he can have his full range of motion at all given times here. But maybe still a little curious as to seeing the ban out here by them. Alongside the Dodgy and the Hubwap bans, the Olympus Bolts will pick up Morgan for that mid lane.
Yeah, Morgan is the Bolts' go-to, right? When I think of the Morgan, Ven is immediately jumping in my mind. It's him and Paul that really love going towards this pick. And got to talk about the transformations when you've got Morgan on your team. And there are some good ones. Got the age-old classic. I forget what we agreed to call it. Cthulhu? Cthulhu?
Depends on who it was. Aggro wouldn't call it anything.
Well, yeah, Aggro, he didn't want to play ball with
I
the
was
goofy
on the
stuff.
I was on the Cthulhu 2 train.
All right. So I'll play devil's advocate. Cthulhu. Definitely available to the Bolts here. No great answer to Descent into Madness on the Jade Dragon side of the map for just one Cthulhu. I mean, Uul doesn't really have that auto attack consistency to shut him down. Susano essentially can't do anything besides just the damage to this Cthulhu. You've got decent DPS if you're able to lock somebody down, like Uul, Susano, Poseidon. Once they apply that CC, can shut someone down with burst damage. But as far as a giant, massive eldritch monster walking down a lane, I don't know how you stop that with the Jade Dragons. Likely has to be poked before the team fight just to make sure that he isn't comfortable with this Cthulhu that is in initiating the fight. And then you still have to concern yourself with a second one or even potentially a double watery grave if the Morgan decides to turn into Kuzumbo. This is an incredibly annoying draft from the Olympus Bolts. Like, top to bottom, everything's going to be unfun for the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, I think annoying, unfun, a nuisance, probably three great ways to describe this draft the Bolts have put together as you highlight that Kuzumbo, a final pick for the Bolts. But going back to the Dragons, Susano, we saw success from it at a Panatom in the first set. Poseidon has a really weird stigma around the league with him. We see him pop up every so often. He sometimes does great. Sometimes does absolutely nothing here. And the Dragons are more often the team than not that are the ones picking up this god here. So how do you feel about the Poseidon when you have the gods surrounding him, this Artio, Geb, and Susano to try and set him up here? How do you feel about this Poseidon as last pick?
You've got good initiation, so Gab can either start off the fight with Cataclysm, follow it up with a knockup. Knockups are undr'able CC, so you should be able to reposition yourself, get ready for that Kraken pretty easily. Even Susano can pull them in a little bit closer. But as far as like just being your main primary source of magical damage, your burst potential, I think that Poseidon is a little bit hit or miss, right? You land the Kraken, sure, you've found something in that team fight, but finding multi-man Krakens is pretty inconsistent. His ability to survive on his own, especially against the dive that we're already seeing from the Bolts, is going to be largely limited. If Set closes gap, going to be very hard for Poseidon to peel off that. If Kuzumbo gets in there, Poseidon really doesn't have any answers to that one either. So I am concerned about this Poseidon's ability to scale into the late game, but as far as finding abilities, at least finding one guy with that ultimate, I think that's going to be very consistent.
And going up against this Bolts, I mean, you got Cthulhu, Kuzumbo as the front line for the Bolts, and one of the things that we always talk about Cthulhu is the ability to burn this god down. Things like kin size is always brought up here. Do you think that a kin size is an easy slot-in item for this Uller to maybe build to try and chop away at him?
Well, when I look at Uller, I want Transcendence, I want Crusher, I want like the whole Mace tree, like all that. Like I want to be that ability focused. I throw out my axe, I connected my axe, so somebody died, and that's generally how you play this Ull. But it is easy to forget that in the bow stance, once you max out that fourth ability, you do get free attack speed, so he can be that auto attacker for your squad. But Ull has never been the best kin size user on the planet. I don't think that has changed at all in Season 9.
It's going to be a big game here between the Jade Dragons and the Bolts. Bolts are one away from moving on. Can they take it away here in Game 2?
It was pure chaos in game number 1 between the Jade Dragons and the Olympus Bolts. A little bit of everything in that one, Gore. We had everything but objective steals, I think. We had team
Objective
fights.
deaths?
Objectives deaths is the word I was looking for that you've already helped me out on. And the Jade Dragons will try to turn this around and push us to a 3-game set up against the Olympus Bolts and Gormizer. Do we value their chances? We got Pagon in mid with Blink, Susano, and it's Sanford Sakura on Poseidon.
You're not going to believe me. When I saw the Poseidon locked in, my first initial...
chance.
Yes.
Don't finish that sentence.
No. I'm not saying I thought it was actually going to happen, but I was going to meme it. Because I thought, haha, you remember when Poseidon used to be played in jungle?
I can live with that.
If you had,
Corey,
if I had said that on the desk and it would have been a joke, and then like your follow up would have been, do you actually think that would happen? I'd go, not in a million years.
Yeah.
And then I'd happily be upset about it.
Gore, you're smart. You're good at your job.
Yeah.
No shot anyone's predicting.
No one's predicting it. You can meme it, though.
Mifflin would probably come in here and say that he would have known that was going to be the case.
Yeah,
At
but
any rate.
Mifflin has that air about him.
Yeah, right. He just gives off that vibe, doesn't he? It's unbelievable. Is he still in here? No, it's just J-Mac decorating the cake. So luckily Miff wasn't in here to hear all that. We were in here to see Jake use his blink and Barracuda use his beads over in the duo lane. So mitigated pressure and defense for the Bolts in the duo lane for the next couple of minutes, whereas PBM and Panda Cat have both. But that's not going to stop the pressure of a Kuzenbo plus Medusa going into a Geb and an Uller.
I like, again, like you said, you're not going to get pressure here if you're PBM and Panda Cat. But the good news is that Geb at least alleviates a lot of pressure. Early on, and maybe not as much. Level 2, theoretically, you're going to be able to provide a little bit more. But I do think that it's going to be fun to watch over time to see how the shield is interacting. Plus, I mean, Geb, it's easy to glance over. There's no way they meant to leave that there. They didn't get the second Harpy. It was like one hit away, and they just left it. That's all
right, now hear me
a little
out.
bit of experience on the board.
Watch, Ven is going to take over to level 4 or 5 just before Pagon does. And it's gonna be because there's the
They're
one
just
Oracle left. No, I guess we got there. Well, and you're not getting value out of it right now, right? I mean, outside of the golden experience. I'm purely playing devil's advocate. Nobody's going for Gold Fury now.
So I'm gonna preface this. Grand scheme, that means literally nothing.
I know, but it is unique. Well,
it's fun. It's a little bit of experience you're missing out.
It's a bad example of a quote you threw out earlier, where it's like, if I had a nickel for every time this happened, I'd only have 2, which isn't many times, but it's weird that it happened at all, right? It's weird that it's happened at all. You don't often see it. But I do want to talk a little bit more, Gore, about the Poseidon jungle, Pagon mid on Susano. I think
you're going to make me analyze it.
No, I mean, to your credit, I think Poseidon jungle, to me, is maybe less weird than Susano mid.
Now, hold on. That is Benny Q's brother.
Yeah, I was going to say, Benny Q's brother is Pagon, so this is something Benny Q would probably play.
Yeah, I was going to say, and there you go. And now
it makes more sense the longer we talk about it. You're right. Maybe it just makes sense for
we
the
just
Jade
talked
Dragons.
ourselves into the Dragons draft.
Yeah, I'm bought into it. All right, but in reality, once the team fighting starts, once you get to mid to late game, things like that, I mean, it's effectively the same. You got a Poseidon that just happened to be played by Sanford Soccer and Pagon on the Susano. It's really these early moments of the game, Gore, where Mage, Jungle, and Assassin mid is going to be made to feel a little bit different in the game.
I was going to jump onto that train, but I'm really interested. Lasper has a much better gank attempt. He's going to go for it.
Could be a big crack in here for Sanford Soccer rotating in, but it's first blood over to the Olympus Bolts, and Sam now doesn't have the opportunity to rotate back into this lane. The timing just a little bit better from Lasper.
But look at Sam. This is why, if you were wondering why we were saying, Poseidon jungle?
He is cruising.
Look, it's day 1 of SPL, and these guys are out here talking about this, and not only is it locked in, it's something that could happen, but it's because his movement speed. You pop your 2, you've got this speed buff, you just zoom across the map. I mean, your gank potential is really high, only because you could show up in right lane, and then within a few seconds it feels like being left all of a sudden for that Kraken. And again, it's just little things like that. So I'm going to watch Sam more for his movement speed than anything. And then if Pagon is making these rotations alongside him, the conversation really is no longer, you've got a Poseidon jungle and a Susano mid. It's you've got this roaming mage assassin combo that just 100 to zeros you in the blink of an eye if you get a Kraken, a Whirlpool, and a little bit of damage.
Panda Cat shoved against the wall by Awesome Jake. PBM and Jake both still level 4, so no Cataclysm. I was going to say no Watery Grave, but there it is. Barracuda doesn't get the stun. Therefore, PBM's going to walk away. This is a downfall of an Assassin mid. Able to be jumped on somewhat quickly. You got to get an auto attack range of those minions. Lasper is nearly able to grab a kill onto Pagon, though Pagon nearly got a kill onto Veneno just a moment before. So the ebbs and flows of the mid lane, certainly there.
It's been sitting there for a little while, so I am going to talk about that Oracle Harpy that's just hanging out.
Nothing's happened to it.
Only because, with the Dragons getting 1, if the Bolts walk up and get it, so it's like an even split camp, but that means no vision for either team. But at this point, the Dragons, whenever they decide to go in there, that's just 1 free ward, just depending on when they want it.
That's what I'm saying, the value wasn't there yet.
You could also have killed it and then killed the camp again and then killed
now.
the camp maybe again by now, but...
Hear me out. A moment ago, when Awesome Jake had Watery Grave and PBM didn't have level 5, Well, maybe that's why. I'm looking at you while Pagon's grabbing a kill on the end. There's a good Kraken out of San Francisco in the jungle. Lasper being chased beneath the tier 1 tower, but he will live on. And it's a 1-kill swing in the mid lane. Jade Dragons even it up.
I like the again, just a little bit of pressure there, all of a sudden being able to pick it up. And specifically on Vin. Vin has been in a little bit of trouble for a lot of the game so far. Pagon goes in, gets a little bit of damage, backs off. Goes in, gets a little damage, backs off. And there's been times where, it specifically happened the last time Pagon backed, you had highlighted the kind of opposite of benefits, because my mind is blanking on the word. Detriments, there we go, of being an assassin in mid. He sent Vin back, and Vin, like, the Morrigan plays a little more assassin-like than most other mages, so kind of makes sense for there to be a lot of parallels here. But realistically, that's the glory of where Pagon can exist, is in this area where he can get Vin just low enough to feel unsafe, and then all of a sudden he closes the gap and gets the kill.
That is a watery grave that may end up being a grave for awesome Jake. That's a good pushback, but Pagon, there's only a delayed kill. 2nd kill of the game over to the new mid laner for the Jade Dragons. And Susano Midgore seems to be working out.
I don't know if you saw his player cam, but Jake puffed his cheeks out and yeah,
frustration?
Like it was, I guess frustration afterward. And yeah, it is one of those plays where, like, you know, maybe you're creating some space, trying to create something, but at the end of the day, you're just trying to stay alive. Vin, very similar scenario. Just trying to stay alive when things are going not necessarily the way he would like them. And this has been good farm from the Dragons. I mean, you know, you talk about last game how it was kind of bouncing back and forth a lot of the game. Didn't really feel like until like 25-ish minutes in that the Dragons even had a lead. They're starting things off much cleaner this time around, at least in terms of experience control.
Blue buff gets invaded successfully by the Jade Dragons. Final K on Ardio will rotate over, swoop that one up. Descent to Madness used by Haddix as well. This should be a solo kill, and it is! Pagon on a killing spree. In mid lane looking just fine for the Jade Dragons in the first 7 minutes of game number 2. There's a chase down though here. Can Pagon survive? Dash away says yes. Shield for Mike says yes. Teleport out also says yes. Now there's a Cataclysm and a Kraken awaiting on the other end, and the Jade Dragons have answered back. Pagon gets a solo, and another kill ends up dropping. The snowball gore seems to be starting.
Well, Pagon, yeah, this is the awkward spot. You get pushed back in, you get to be able to get aggressive, and no way does the Kappa Nene get a kill. I mean, that is hands down a good play for the Dragons, and then just a little bit of over-lingering. And all of a sudden, it's kind of like a guest after 3 days, like a fish after 3 days. All of a sudden, it's just not what you want around anymore. And unfortunately, that's exactly where they were.
Panicat steals away that red buff over the wall. It's a little salt in the wound. As the back and forth nature of this set gore continues on. I wonder if the maybe power curve of the lane, maybe that's the way I want to word it, in the mid. So think about playing like a hunter or a mage solo, right? Where it feels like early on, you're just fine, like you can kind of swing in that lane. But eventually, the solo laner you're playing up against, the warrior or the guardian, gets tanky enough where they can just kind of chill in lane.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's the opposite in mid, where like early on in the lane, it probably feels bad if you're Pagon, you know, Ven has this ranged poke damage, things like that. But eventually, Pagon gets to a point where you can just dive on Ven.
I think the best way to describe it is like Vin, and this goes for a lot of mages overall in mid, is it's kind of like a plateau. You start out in a good spot, like you said, but then, you know, 7 levels from then, your spot's kind of the same. Like, you've got better clear now, and maybe you're able to deal with the waves a little bit better. You've got an item online, but it's not as much damage as someone like an assassin who, like you said, the curve is going to be like, you're not doing too hot at the very beginning, and then in 5 levels, all of a sudden, you've jumped up slightly above.
Awesome Jake eats 2 big ultimates, but trades out his own. He's able to walk on out of that one. So Cataclysm and Kraken both gone. San Francisco's been pretty on point with his Krakens up to this point. Just the 1 kill, as Pagon has been lifting a lot of weight on his own out of the mid lane. This is Susano off to a 3-1-1 start. Then able to keep up an experience though, Gore. Just 1 level behind. I say just 1 because you know you might expect that gap to be a little bit wider with how far ahead Pagon is. Venenu's taken a couple of those deaths, but that is where the lead is. Final K's got a 1 level lead over Haddix as well. But it's how the team fight looks, Score, where the desk really felt like the Olympus Bolts had a good advantage in this game with the double Cthulhu mindset, plus the dive and the disruption of a set, and a Kuzan bow, and a Medusa there to supply some more damage. That's where the Olympus Bolts maybe still put some of their confidence.
Yeah, no, I think rightly so. I still think that in the middle of a team fight, when you've got all of the disruption the Bolts have and dive potential, there's a lot of conversation to be had about distractions for the Dragons, who's going to be able to protect like Panda Cat in all of this. Granted, you're going to have to go through a Kraken, a Whirlpool, good slows. Sam's still a mage, though, right? And one without a leap or anything. So, like, Sam trying to start things off. Like, Sam's not going to – he doesn't have Blink yet. I'm going to put that caveat on there in case he gets it at 12. But he doesn't have that close gap that other junglers have. And so being able to find the aggression from him is maybe a little less likely than what we saw in the Hunbats, right? What we can see out of Pagon in this game. And so he really is going to be almost role swapping with where we expect to see Pagon. Pagon's going to be going into the deep back line, looking for those fights, blinking in, finding ults. And I think Sam is just going to be looking for big damage to set up everybody else.
Yep. The hit or miss nature, literally, of a Poseidon jungle called into question here. We'll see what Sanford Soccer is able to get done as the game goes on. By the way, Oracle update. Other one did get taken down, I believe, by the Jade Dragons. Actually, I have no idea, but it's gone. It's respawning. That's what's really important, Core, is the oracles have been cleared, and we'll be respawning here in just a little bit of time.
And here's how I can tell you it's the bolts. There's no vision over that Gold Fury.
There you go.
And that's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know.
Or
the oracles were split.
There's no way. I was gonna say, or there's some weird timer thing where if you kill one oracle and then like 10 minutes later kill the other, it doesn't. No, it's gonna be clean. Now they can pick them up if they really wanted to. And there's your experience.
Oracle
baby.
Watch 2022 continues as the Jade Dragons walk in towards the Gold Fury, and the oracles are taken fully
now as
by
we
the
check
Jade
in with the
Dragons.
oracles.
We're dead. That's the check-in. They're dead and keeping watch over the Gold Fury now for the Jade Dragons. The Olympus Bolts show up. Don't want to give that early objective over cleanly, but kind of this passive income has started to build up, Core. Jade Dragons 1 kill lead, but about 1.5k gold in the lead. And the experience feeling not horrible if you're the Olympus Bolts at this point. 1.4 to 1,000 experience in the lead as well. Not as drastic swings as we got in game number 1, right? I mean, a lead in the grand scheme of this set feels pretty manageable.
And it's one of those things, like, you look at the picks that the Dragons bring into this, and it's pretty easy to laugh at and be like, haha, look, they're doing something funny. But it's working pretty well for them.
Oh, it is.
For something that, like, depending on whether or not they continue playing this throughout the next few weeks, we'll be able to have this conversation a lot more. But, like, even if this was just a one-off, it's surprisingly comfortable for them and what they're able to bring. I think the Geb fits into this really well. Again, if Pagon, Sam are going to be going relatively deep, now you've got someone who can provide a shield from far away and really help you get out of there.
This is the story we've been telling. Pagon engaging on a Veneno, but this time Ven quick on the transformation. And Pagon's on the wrong side of this fight. Lasper reminds him where he belongs. He is in the grave for 35 seconds. Lasper gets taken down in trade, though, by Panda Cat as a 1-for-1 engagement in the mid lane. A double knock-up on the backside puts Awesome Jake in a spot to send Fido K back towards mid. There won't be another kill to fall.
Now, I want to talk about
Barra hasn't been here.
but they're getting aggressive, and Barra, he still has his ult.
Petrify could make a difference. As some low health targets
there,
walk
Barra.
beneath the tier 1 tower.
You got it.
You want to see Barra slither on forward.
I just want to fight.
But it won't be there. I know, I agree. Won't be there for the Olympus Bolts. They're going to hold on to the Petrify and just nudge some damage into the tier 1 tower.
We had 5 kills this time last game. That's what I was going to mention. Parallels, big fights for the Bolts that feel like they should be, more team-wide sweeps. And that one felt like it should have continued going their way. A lot of low health bars for the Dragons, but they get out just in time. For it to ultimately end up being like this 1-for-1, balancing out fight, I think is a great showcase for the Dragons, because the 2 Cthulhus is what they're going to be dealing with. The set, being able to kill him off, that's what you're going to be dealing with. So showcasing that you can do that now, 13 and a half minutes in, to me, signals that you should be doing just fine 23 and a half minutes in. We'll see if they can continue that kind of trajectory for themselves. But I like the fact that they handle that team fight relatively calm and collected. They don't worry too much. Veneno doesn't get as much done. And last time, that was what really kicked things off for the Bolts, was one really big team fight for them. And so if the Dragons can keep them kind of clamped down, it'll really open up the conversation for them to continue pushing this lead.
Lasbra is dead on the other end of the fight. When you're committing that much into Laz, there's no chance that he survives. Aegis gets used, but probably could have held on to that one. Dead either way in that fight. Sanford Soccer drops the Kraken. Cataclysm out from Polar Bear Mike as well. And then continued pressure over on the left side of the map. Good rotation over by Haddix here. You're going to save the life of this tier 1 tower on the left. And Gore, I think that's important. Keeping things just a pick onto Lasbra, and you're not losing that much global pressure.
And realistically, again, any amount of pressure you can get in a match like this is important. You're only 2,000 gold behind. That's not anywhere near that big of a lead.
Are you feeling the pressure, Gore?
Again, it comes from those Furies, and not really.
No?
Like, from what? Just life?
Let's have an existential talk, Gore.
Okay.
What a perfect time for it
Yeah.
in Game 2 of this set. No,
Well, things have lulled out. This
things
is
have
the
lulled out.
exact
No,
time.
you're absolutely right. No, but the pressure shouldn't be there for these teams. The SPL officially kicks off next week.
I tried to pull you down.
Gore, because you know I would dive in there with you in a moment. I could talk for an entirety of a game about existential things. We don't have time. Haddix is being engaged on by Fine OK and Sam. Thanks, fellas, for not forcing me to discuss life. And Awesome Jake is going to do the same as he takes half of his health and damage. It's a Tier 1 tower in mid lane under the eye of the Jade Dragons here. Fully stocked up on ultimates are the Olympus Bolts. Waiting for those last couple are the Dragons. But Tier 1 tower at this point, Gore, not worth fighting over in the Bolts.
Now, if you're looking at it, again, map state, when you just say, like, Tier 1 to Tier 1, that makes things relatively even. That mid-Tier 1 is worth more than that solo Tier 1 right now. It just gives you a lot more pressure around the jungle bus. I mean, look at where the Dragons are. That mid-Tier 1 is standing. You don't get this aggressive because they have a little more safe havens available to them. But now you're able to walk in, steal some Obelisk offerings. You're able to steal a purple buff. Apparently, you're still able to steal a red buff. And you do it all without anybody from the Bolts really looking at you. I mean, look at where Barra is. He's essentially hiding in his own lane.
I feel like this is something we've seen from the Jade Dragons a couple of times this game. Over on left, just one member. Last time it was Lasbra. This time Awesome Jake here for a little support, but he's all on his own. That's a good watery grave, except he's nearly going to die. He has to leave this fight, though. Awesome Jake has to go back to base, so it's going to be a 4 versus 5 on left for the time being. There's just no follow-up on a decent initiation from the Bolt support.
Again, I think that's going to be some of the biggest problems they have right now is just, you know, how aggressive is Jake getting, and then is there anybody there? So far, there's been a lot of that. I think last game there was a lot. Specifically, you'd see good walls from Lasbra and then nothing, or you'd see a good wall from Jake and then nothing. And it still seems to be a little bit of a problem here. Not as easy setup, I think, for the Bolts this time around as they did in Game 1. The walls were pretty easy to just decide, yes, I'm going to go ahead and create a fight for us if we want it. And now there's there's an assassin that you have to deal with. There's a lot of damage from this Poseidon so far. And I think that Sam, I mean, as someone who should and could get punished a lot harder than he has been coasting along really comfortably on this Poseidon. And, you know, I kind of joked about it earlier, like how Ra has his movement speed and his passive, and admittedly, like, that gets you moving places, but it doesn't necessarily get you out.
Look at him go.
Poseidon is just covering the map. And it makes things so much easier for Sam. Like, you don't need a leap if you're moving twice as fast as anybody expects you to.
Oh my god. That's almost like a goofy level of speed. He is going so fast. He's just zooming around with the
it's not even, you know, crazy high from what I saw there.
No, just like it. Just I think it's the way he glides, right? He just glides along. It's the way it looks.
Just wait till he hits his 2.
I know. I'm excited for it, Gore. Can't wait. It's like the I was like a Vulcan build for a little while. You just immediately build Doomorb on Vulcan, and he just like flies around the map, and it's like impossible to catch. I guess that's anyone building Doomorb, but I'm surprised maybe Ven didn't go for Doomorb, Gore. We usually see Doomorb somewhere with the Morgan, don't we? But I guess Flat Pen strong enough right now that that Ven is more focused on dealing damage than he is the movement speed. That, I mean, Doomorb has big stats outside of that, but we'll see how that build plays out here for the Olympus Bolts and Veneno around the Pyromancer. Some early poke damage finds its way into the front line of the Bolts and into the front line of the Dragons, but no big commit just yet on the Pyro.
And I like this play from both the Bolts and the Dragons. The Dragons not committing heavily to a Pyromancer because, yes, you've got a lead. No, it's not big enough that you can really just, you know, waltz up and demand the objective. But the Bolts as well, like, being cautious. They can't just walk at the Dragons and expect success. They've got to find good picks, and this is not a good spot to be.
Pagon has already soloed Ven this game and nearly gets a solo on the Lasbra, and the Kraken will finish the job. Now the Jade Dragons are able to fight with a one-man advantage, and Awesome Jake has been learning the hard way that Panda Cat has a whole lot of burst in that back pocket. Awesome Jake desperately waddling away. The blink should secure his escape. And the Nene as well. We'll put the icing on the cake. Pyromancer under the eye of the Jade Dragons. I know, I want a piece of that cake. The Jade Dragons take down the Pyro and get another kill on the last.
Hold on. Now that I'm looking over there, somebody took part of my canvas. I was going to write something on the front. Somebody else already did it. I'm kind of upset about that. Either way, I think that this is, again, a good showcase. I think, you know, I think you saw me, but I was holding up my hands as scales, right? Where it's like, okay, you drop 2 ults, but you kill Lasbra. Is that in and of itself worth it? And maybe at base, not as much. Then you almost kill Jake. You get him out of there. You get a Pyro. You get another Fury for your pockets. All of a sudden, I don't care how many ults you drop for it, right? Because you are continuing just an iron grip on the neutral objectives across the map. I mean, this has been clean play pretty much from top to bottom for the Dragons. They got a couple of deaths. The Pagon, it's almost expected because of how deep you have to dive. And the same thing, Sam going down just once, to me, is actually more impressive just because of the fact that it feels like he should have been able to get taken care of a little more often. But unless the Bolts really figure out a way to clap back in some of these team fights, and specifically on the in-cages, I mean, Lasbra in a 1v1 versus Pagon was not dealing pretty much any damage to the Susano versus how much he took. And so things like that are where the shifts need to be made. If you're going to get in that 1v1, you can't just get 100 to 0. You got to figure out how you're going to get your damage off, dodge out some of the abilities, which is way easier said than done. I acknowledge that. But you need to be able to survive some of these.
Awesome Jake uses Watery Grave, and the Jade Dragons will watch it happen. That is just threat from Polar Bear Mike. It's the Olympus Bolts without big initiation ultimate. They're going to send Lasbra away around the backside. Objective shouldn't be a concern for the Jade Dragons here. And as far as Secure goes, you've got a Kraken. Haddix also takes a big chunk of damage. Panda Cat is just slamming damage this game, whether it's Haddix or Awesome Jake or Veneno who's transformed into the Cthulhu. Damage has not been an issue for Panda Cat. So Lasbra is around the back here. Sends some damage towards the Jade Dragons, but now his position is revealed. Fire Giant is reset as PBM, Panda Cat, and Sanford Soccer get out of the FG pit. And still cautious scorer are the Jade Dragons, despite having that Kraken for objective secure.
It's just risky. Theoretically, the Bolts have Kraken for objective secure, if they so please.
Yeah,
right?
I guess
like,
that's true, right?
So it's that, you know, normal conversation. Most of the time, it is we have the secure, we shouldn't worry about it. And I think in this case, is Vin going to be like poised over Poseidon most of the time? No, God, no, absolutely not. But being able to become an Artio, being able to become a Cthulhu, starting a team fight off, force the Kraken out early, maybe makes Sam a little more uncomfortable. Or, like I said, if you just straight up turn into a Poseidon and steal the Kraken away from him, it could create an awkward position for them. And this is, again, a very different dynamic than what I expect. I mean, with this amount of a lead, there's a lot of respect being shown by the Dragons to not get aggressive. I think maybe partially earned from last game after things went so topsy-turvy for them. But I think there is, you know, there's a moment where you're going to have to start getting aggressive. You're going to have to start kind of pushing the advantage you have while you have it, or else they'll start catching up in gold. They'll start catching up. I mean, experience isn't even that different between the two.
Awesome Jake, luckily able to dash away for his sake, as the Jade Dragons had set a bit of a trap. Double Heartseeker, one for Pagon, one for Panda Cat. So you're wondering why a lot of this damage is connecting onto the front lines. That's one example of why. Oh, Panda Cat also has a hi-rez and a fully stacked Transcendent, so that's also.
And a Crusher.
And
He's just got a really good build.
Awesome Jake has to use the Watery Grave. This time there is some follow-up though. Haddix descends into madness. Awesome Jake lives on the back line of the fight, but Veneno barely gets into his own ultimate. Petrify out from Barracuda on the backside of the fight as Haddix runs down Sanford Soccer. The engagement is split and teams are winning their respective engagements. Panda Cat gets one, but Awesome Jake answers back with another of his own one-for-one trade support for Solo.
For a while there, that fight just was not what you want. And 1-for-1, losing Haddix probably hurts more than losing Mike, just because level 19 versus level 16. The
Mike's
Geb,
crying right now.
He's going to be
He
able to
just
come
heard that
back in. Yeah, no, well, no, he'll acknowledge it. He'll say, yeah, no, kill me, please.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Right? In terms of trade to kill off Haddix, it's absolutely worthwhile for it. And I was watching health bars because 3 people on the Bolts got knocked down into the red before a single person on the Dragons did. I think Sam hit it maybe as the 3rd person on the Bolts did, but the damage in return, the Dragons have so much up front. It just feels like the Bolts haven't been able to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, look at Jake. I mean, that's not that much health. But that's like 2 objectives and like a couple of autos from Panda Cat. Objectives. What's the abilities? I got Panda Cat and objectives in my mind. He got killed by the objective in game 1. You know, the two are just kind of melding together right now. Abilities is the proper word. Panda Cat's connecting a couple abilities onto Awesome Jake, and it's chunking down that health bar. It's just been awkward. And then Sphere of the Magus there for Sanford Soccer as well. That has just amplified the damage that these frontliners are taking as they've had to walk in. And Ven wants to be a Cthulhu, but so much damage has been connecting onto the health bars that that's felt awkward as well. I don't know if we've seen the full force of a Bolts fight where the Bolts initiate, the Bolts get 2 Cthulhus at the start of a fight, and it's not defensive. It feels like the Jade Dragons have been the ones calling the shots. And Awesome Jake again loses over half of his health by simply standing there.
That hurts. I mean, you know, and again, you have to look at Panda Cat's build. You had kind of mentioned it, like the Heartseeker, the hi-rez, the Crusher. The trans lets him get some more mana, more abilities out, and everything else in there is you've got pin and damage. Just hit real hard, real fast. I mean, look at this fire giant.
It is burning. Kraken confirms the FG as Ven and the rest of the Olympus Bolts watch it go down. But there's an initiation. Lasbra has chosen this fight, and he's chosen his fate. The Jade Dragons disengaging as hard as they can, but they've got a winning numbers advantage on the other end of this fight should they go back in. Haddix has to dash away here. There's 4 members of the Bolts back up. Petrify out from Barracuda, but did not do nearly enough damage. Watery Grave from Jake as one by one the Bolts are going in.
At this point, I mean, you keep things going. You might be able to get Pagon. No, there's a shell. It's just enough to keep him going. The shield's so good.
And Final K's got a kill on a Barra in the meantime. But the backline dive continues. Haddix, Ven, and Jake continue their onslaught. Another great shield from Mike. Keeps the health bar nice and topped off. Ven de-transforms. And he's got damage awaiting on the other side. Final K gets a double kill. And the Olympus Bolts will not get what they came for, and the Jade Dragons will.
There's so many things to jump at. I'm going to just start from the very beginning here. It's a very good place to start. Pagon gets killed off, but it's from Lasbra's over-aggression, right? Lasbra has jumped in, and this is what kind of distracted me for that fight. Lasbra's done 10,000 damage. Now, at the time, he was 4th on the player charts. Now he has dropped drastically down, but that 10,000 does not reflect to me what we see in the KDA. 2-5 and 2 hasn't been able to get as much done over there. And so I keep looking at these numbers and he keeps going in and he's just not dealing the damage. I mean, and you look at his build, you know, Jotun's some power there. Now the Heartseeker, some power there. But everything in the middle, not as powerful of a punch as let's look at Pagon's build, right? The other assassin on the board. And so realistically, Lasbra's getting in there, and you'd think with some of the survivability he has that it would mean something, but
oh my God.
At the end of the day, he hasn't been able to contribute that much. Granted, still more damage than we've seen from Sam, so at least jungle to jungle, he's matching there, but I think as an assassin, he's just not able to do almost anything. And then, you know, you're pointing at it a little lower on those charts. Vin has hit, you know, 3 Cthulhu knockups and some slashes, and I think that's all of his damage. None of that screams to me where the Morrigan typically is. And so it just feels like the damage numbers from the Bolts there are just, they're not lining up with what these gods are capable of, and realistically what this team needs is for those two specifically to step up for the next team fight if they want to win.
Jade Dragons have just gotten their initiation figured out, and their disengage / re-engage figured out. The Olympus Bolts have not had their feet underneath them really at any point this game. Pagon controlled things in mid. Was 3-1, now 3-3, so there has been a slowdown. The Olympus Bolts have identified a target. Pagon's having to go in a lot just by nature of being Susano. But the answers elsewhere have been there. Panda Cat is just swinging this game. Primal Fury goes down this time. No casualties in the meantime. And the Jade Dragons, they've got Fire Giant buff gore for a little bit longer here. Next Fire Giant will be enhanced if we get there. The Olympus Bolts are going to have to defend.
Panda Cat has double the damage Vera does. And that could just be a mic drop. He's done twice the damage his opponent in lane has been able to do. But just he's 6,000 up on his own team, for God's sake. I mean, I think Panda Cat is doing so much from the back line, and he's 4-0-2, right? He's getting the kills. He's not necessarily quiet about it, but it feels like he's not getting almost any attention on him. I mean, look at this. No damage, not a lot of pressure put onto him. That last fight, he did almost go down over towards right. So there is at least an acknowledgement from the Bolts that he's definitely a problem. But I think if you can get rid of him, if you can, put Lasber in a spot or Vin in a spot where they can kill him off, that makes this easy.
Could be the fight for the Olympus Bolts, the one that either saves the game or ends it. The Jade Dragons desperately sprinting away. Pagon is going to send out the Whirlwind, but doesn't do anything. Doesn't get any knockups. You can't knock up Haddix while he's in his ultimate. But how about this on the back? It's a Kraken, it's huge, and it's got everyone on the Olympus Bolts reeling as the first kill drops, and it's Lasber who goes down. Panda Cat snags two. Sam for Soccer has lived this entire time because Polar Bear Mike with the shielding has been absurd.
Finally.
A triple kill for Panda Cat, a quadra kill around the corner, but it gets taken by Pagon. Panda is mad, but the Jade Dragons are happy, and it looks like they'll take game 2.
Yeah, with the fire minions already in there, they don't even need the Phoenix on top of that. Look, Sam, it does exactly what you need. Good Krakens, good base damage. And honestly, Pagon does what he needs. At the beginning, he's getting a lot of kills. Towards the end, he's just playing Smite. Granted, some of that Smite was being played at him. He didn't get to do as much. Panda Cat just relaxes, does a casual 27k damage, like it's nothing on the Uller.
Chill, 7-0.
I'm worried about that one, right? I think, not for the Bolts overall. We saw what they could do in Game 1, a lot more back and forth.
I'm terrified for the Bolts. Let's end the season now.
It's end it all. No, I just think that Panda Cat does so much throughout all of that. I think Mike is able to do a ton in terms of saving. You can see him there. Not looking too happy after that win, which is a little surprising.
Yeah, he's got the wrong jersey on.
But,
give him his Dragons jersey in time. I appreciate that you appreciated that one, Gore. Thank you.
Yeah, it caught me off guard. I didn't expect it. I just think that there's a lot of opportunity there for the Bolts that we never got to see. The set didn't do as much damage as I would have expected. The Morgan didn't do as much damage as I would have expected. And meanwhile, the rest of the damage was all being dealt by Panda Cat.
We'll see how long we can keep this balloon up. Can we keep it up through the break? Stick around and find out.
welcome back to the Smite Pro League Kickoff Tournament. Game number 2. This time the Dragons are able to close it out after having a nice little lead to start this one off. And a lot of it off the back of Pandacat and Pagon really here. You know, mid lane started off pretty volatile for him more than anything. When we saw like a tier 1 tower dive like 7 minutes in by Pagon, and then ending that game off for Pandacat, able to pick up a triple kill, nearly a quadra. And the Dragons are able to turn this one around here and take game 2.
Yeah, this is one where Jazzberry Jam is in full effect, right? From minute 1, they were able to find dominance on the map. I will legitimately say that I was concerned for the Jade Dragons once we first saw the double Cthulhu in the center of the map. I was like, how do you fight into that? They didn't. They walked away, and they did it very well because Sanford Soccer is like the fastest guy on the planet. But had the Jade Dragons not got off to as fast a start, I really think that composition would have struggled. So good on the Dragons to hit the ground running and find exactly what they needed. And good on Pagon, just showing that he's not just a standard mid laner. My man can, I don't know, be a weirdo. Yeah, I think that's the right way to describe a Susano mid.
I think, what's the phrase? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I mean, both the brothers out here are playing these weird assassin mid picks. You know, so usually it's like Tsukiyomi for like Benny Q, but Pagon coming out here and bringing Susano this time around. Here's this tier 1 dive I was talking about earlier on. Not even a dive into tier 1, just going between the 2 towers on the Susano to get a kill. Pandacat just doing everything that he can to get through the early. That one got me a little bit there. I will admit that one got me, but Pandacat an 8.5 KDA, 27,000 damage, and this game-ending triple kill here. I mean, they were already 12,000 gold up, and this was the final nail in the coffin that the Dragons needed to seal this game.
Yeah, it just goes to show the only thing that stops Pandacat is the Gold Fury, and he did not line up for the 1v1 this time around, rightfully so, and the rest of his team benefited mightily from it. Yeah, I passed him in the hallway, and he goes, Mifflin, did you know they buffed the Gold Fury? And I was like, yeah, dude, I read patch notes.
Which patch was it?
Come on, man. You know how many patches there are? Like 92R64, all right? That one.
Well, speaking of Pandacat here, reading back up on the patch notes to make sure he's got everything under wraps here for game number 3. After an experienced game 1 getting solo by, he says, okay, game 2, I won't make that same mistake twice. Didn't. And now the Dragons are sitting comfortable here as they move in towards game number 3. But as we get into this draft here, we've seen a lot of...
pull it.
He's playing slots in the middle of the...
I'm pretty sure that's Jetpack Joyride.
Is that?
I'm pretty sure.
I couldn't tell you because I will notoriously tell you I am horrible about playing games on my phone. I will play them for at most
You don't have games
week.
on your phone?
I have a ton of games that I don't play on my phone.
Okay,
I'll play them for a week and then they're gone. Pandacat 7-0 here on the Uller to end this game out. Top of the damage charts for his team. Pagon right behind him. I can't even say right behind means it's a 9,000 gold or 9,000 damage difference.
A small 9K.
A small 9K damage difference between the top and then the second highest on not just his team but in the game here. And Olympus Bulls now have a lot of questions to answer. I mean,
oh, nice.
Oh, dang, can I get a piece?
Oh, and some Sprinkies?
Oh, you got
some Jimmy Jims?
Got
Where'd you get all those?
Okay, I'm going to be real out there. Who actually calls them Jimmies?
Like everyone from the Northeast.
I've only ever heard it from like that episode of like Kids Next Door. I think is like the only time I've ever heard them referred to as Jimmies.
Who said it?
I think it was the Delightful Children from Down the Lane.
And they were from the Northeast.
Were they?
I don't know.
I have no idea. I have absolutely no clue out here. I mean, that cake is covered in sprinkles and everything. We got like the mini Maxonomic chairs in the middle of that cake now too. Thanks a lot, Hindu, for
happy birthday.
Basically taking out the middle. Happy birthday, Smite. If you haven't already, take part in the birthday event going on right now.
There's a gem sale, right?
There is a gem sale. 33% off all your gems until the 27th, if I'm not mistaken there. And then, as always, now we get a nice little look at the cake and everything that's been slammed on it there. But also make sure that you're logging on and playing every day so you can get that new Husky Handler Scotty skin that's out there. I think it's 6 days total that you need to play in order to get that one out there. So make sure that you're tuning in to play in the games, but also make sure you're tuning into this event right now because we got Game 3 coming up right now. Picks and bans for the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons. And one of the questions I got to ask Mifflin, do we see answered, is do you just ban this Uller for the sake of taking Pandacat out of the hot seat?
There are multiple answers to this, right? You could leave the Uller up and hope that he got overconfident off of that great performance and tries to fight the Gold Fury again with Uller. That's one answer. Or you could ban it out. I'm just not certain that Uller is in a position where he is so powerful in the lane that you want to dedicate a ban towards it. Sure, arguments could be made, like Pandacat elevates the pick, it fits his play style, it is something that you could address, and he did top damage by nearly 5 digits. But are you going to force him down to a Medusa? Do we think he doesn't have that pick in the back pocket? Is he going to go towards a now nerfed but still incredibly strong Izanami? I would argue he could probably do that pretty easily. There's just so much priority picks available in the Hunter role that I think it is very difficult for the Bolt to say, yeah, Ullr.
So far, there hasn't been an Ullr ban or much of a change at all in these bans. Erlong and Gilgamesh out of the Dragons once again, and same 3 bans out of the Bolts. There is something about these 3 picks specifically that the Bolts just do not want to deal with, whether it's in general or up against the Jade Dragons. They will not allow this raw Khepri Fafnir to make its way through Jade Dragons with one more ban before it goes back over to the Bolts. And I believe in this slot in game number 1, Jade Dragons banned the RTO because they did not want to give that one over to the Bolts. We'll see if that holds true here in game 3.
Yeah, Final K has been incredibly vocal about his power ranking of that pick and says that RTO is probably one of the best picks in the Soul Lane right now, but instead, it's the Kabrakan ban. That is the other pick that I associate with Lasbra and with Serket eating as major of a change. I think it is a change. It's more of a shift than it is a buff or a nerf. That it might be a little bit more of a contentious pick where you're not sure whether or not Lasbra is still comfortable on it. And the Jade Dragons essentially say, all right, let's test it. If Lasbra wants to go back towards his Season 8 favorite, his most successful pick in Serket, he's going to have to prove it here because we're not going to dedicate the ban. Instead, target out the other jungler that we've already seen perform very well, the Kabrakan.
Kabrakan does get banned away. RDO first pick for the Olympus Bolts this time around. And the Jade Dragons answer back with Kleena, who has now seen success not just in the jungle, but also in that solo lane role. And the Jade Dragons will make sure to continue feeding the hot hand here. Ullr, one more time locked in to go over to Panda Cat.
It's the exact same pick. It's hard to break down the same pick 3 times in a row, but I'm going to do it because it's my job. Ull has a lot of pressure in the lane, can transition very well into these team fights, but his main strength is his ability to be that single target obliteration, just essentially a physical mage, in that if he lands the axe, you're probably removing someone from a team fight at any portion of the game. Even in the late game, we saw it up against Awesome Jake. Axe stun combo did upwards of 30-40% of his HP, and then Jake had to play a little bit more cautiously throughout the rest of that team fight, and that is the main strength of this Ull. Matched up with the Kleena, last time we saw this pick, it was out of the Soul Lane, and does have very strong objective damage. Considering Ull does not go for that standard auto attack style, you got to get that objective damage somewhere else. I think Kleena does it well.
Yeah. Okay, maybe, actually, you know what, I'm not even going to count myself out of this one. Hubwa locked in on the side of the Jade Dragons. Could be mid. Could go jungle, though, because we did see Sam play a Poseidon jungle last time with it behind. I was going to say, I would not put it behind the Jade Dragons mid laner, specifically between Pagon or Benny Q from the Valkyries, to take this cleanup potentially into the mid lane. I'm going to throw that as a possibility out there because I didn't expect the Susano.
Gotta play the field. You're right.
I didn't expect the Susano of all the assassins to go into the mid, but again, we are dealing with Pagon and Benny Q. They've been doing some of the wildest stuff out in the SCC. And now here in the SPL, we get to see a little bit of that spice come through. Thoth actually being banned out here by the Jade Dragons. Maybe a little surprising because now with the changes to the flat pin, it seems that some of those hot gods from the previous patch toned down just a little bit. Just a little.
Just a little bit. But I still think Thoth is incredibly strong. I mean, sure, it's not that same level of damage output at second item, but like third item, it's about the same, right? You slow down your power curve a bit, but Thoth's ability to just get involved from a massive range, to poke out some of these gods, is incredibly high. The Thoth ban for me does slightly indicate that it might be Hubwa in mid, just because Hubwa has one of the worst matchups in a Thoth, full stop, right? I mean, Hubwa is essentially a magical assassin in that every single one of his abilities generally is going to be relatively close range, except for Water Spout, and that's just one of them. Does a lot of damage, worth noting that it no longer roots you, so you can keep moving. I would argue more quality of life than it is a direct buff to Hubwa. But what's Thoth going to do? Oh, you need to step up to the wave to do water hands? Joke's on you, man. I'm inside my tower. I'm clearing the wave, and I'm hitting you. So that is, I think, a major stepping stone for this team, and the Jade Dragons rightfully banned that one out. But all that analysis has got me second-guessing myself because Baron Samdi locked in. I was talking to Trelly about this in the green room just a moment ago, and he said, man, I really want to see Baron Samdi in mid. With the changes recently, quick coffin feels pretty good. You can maneuver around a lot more easily. You got a lot of sustain. I'm like, look, we might see Baron Samdi, and it might be the Jade Dragons locking it in, but it is so much more likely to go to the Soul Lane.
Yeah, Baron, and Final Case specifically, has talked about in the past how he really does like this pick over in solo. We've also seen Baron support, so I have absolutely no idea where anything.
Zero idea? You gotta have some idea.
I have thoughts of where they might go, but I don't know for sure where these gods are going to be lining out just yet. Agni and Scotty, a little bit easier to break down there. Agni towards the mid lane. Scotty back over towards Barracuda. Throw that back into his hands. And the Dodgy against Kleena Uller, actually something that we kind of just glossed over here, has 2 really great targets to pull in with that Powwow.
She does. There's plenty here. Look, now that we've got the Agni locked in, I'm thinking that it's got similar matchup potential into Hubwa that Thoth did, which could force the Jade Dragons to shift up the draft slightly, potentially have Kleena in the soul lane. You've got Hubwa in the jungle, Baron Samdi mid. This Bastet hover's making me really second-guess myself. It's a Medusa lock-in, and I've got 0 clue now what's happening on the map.
I think I got it.
Oh, you do?
Kleena solo.
Okay.
Uller back over to Panda Cat. Medusa mid.
Uh-huh.
Baron support. Hubwa jungle.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
I think
probably where I'd put most of it.
I think that's where I'm going to hedge my bet on, is that spot.
Yeah, and I'm that guy at the party that signs my name on your card at the gift. I'm like, yeah, and Mifflin.
And Mifflin out here. But with this rather unorthodox style that the Jade Dragons have drafted over here on this right side of the screen, let's kind of look back over to the left side, talk about some of the strengths here of the Bolts. I mean, the very high CC that the Dodgy and Geb are going to be able to provide out here. Great beads burners, even Ardio even. When you're looking at a comp like the Jade Dragons and you're looking down the barrel of what the Bolts have drafted here, what are those moments that the Dragons need to kind of get their highs up before they can really be comfortable going in the game?
Look, when you have got an as eclectic a draft as the Jade Dragons, there is one simple answer that I can always give you that will make any draft in Smite work. It's a secret that's been kept in my family for generations. You have to just win the early. Any draft with a massive lead is simply going to be strong because that's what more gold and more experience can do for you, especially when you are completely lacking a front line. And that is exactly what the Jade Dragons have got here. If you don't have a front line, you need the natural levels to just run it down. So I'm going to say the Jade Dragons need to dominate the early with this style of draft, especially considering how CC light they really are. Whereas the Bolts, on the other end, have just got a normal composition. They are just playing Smite, so their win conditions are much simpler. It's, can we just stay even until the point, like a late-game team fight and a 5-on-5, or where our standard Smite draft is just going to be better by nature of having CC, by having a front line, by being that just classical Smite knowledge. So, TLDR, Dragons need to win early. The Bolts just need to survive.
Bolts, if they can make it there, will be big. Winner of this one moves on, and they face off the Atlantis Leviathans tomorrow in order to try and have a chance to make it into that final day of play out into this tournament here. Olympus Bolts, as you said, a very standard it feels more like this is like the 5-6 p.m. draft that you see in your normal games on the side of the Bolts, and then the Dragons are like your 2 a.m. we're just gonna run it down kind of a comp, man.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's the Jade Dragon style. They'll say it more than any of us will, that they love to just run it down. This is a composition that can do that. Whether or not it's going to be easy, I'm not sure. I didn't think the Jade Dragon's last draft would have worked, but it did, so I'm not going to judge them just yet.
Well, will this bizarre draft out of the Jade Dragons work for them here in game number 3, or are the Bolts going to turn around and take this set? Let's jump right into game 3 and see what happens.
Our first game 3 of the year, and it's the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons. After a little bit of chaos in game 1, things stabilize Gore in game 2, and Paying the Cat goes off. We're going to sprinkle a little more chaos back into game number 3 here. A team that I guess we should just expect to be picking some fun stuff all year long. The Jade Dragons throw Hebo in the jungle for Sanford Soccer. Worth talking about the changes on his knock-up. The water spout no longer roots himself in place while that's casting, so a nice quality of life change. PBM on Baron support. Look, I've been a big Baron supporter for, not supporter in the role, but supporter as a fan for a long time here. And so I'm glad to see Baron get a little bit of pro play.
Yeah, honestly, I'm always happy to see Baron when he comes through, especially against a comp like this. I think he's going to be able to do decently well. There will be the like 1-to-1 conversion. If Mike gets stunned, then Jake shield, and that theoretically should help things out. But ultimately, it's going to be like an awkward thing to deal with. Having that Baron ult in the middle of a team fight, it just messes with your positioning, right? All of a sudden, you're getting pulled in. You have to think about it. You have to be worried about it. So Mike can put a lot of pressure on him. Being said, and I think the desk put this very aptly, if you lose in the next 5 minutes, if a couple of kills go the way of the Bolts and they get an early objective or anything like that, then you probably just lose total, right? I mean, this is a team that if you get ahead, you win hard from ahead, but you have to make sure that you don't fall behind.
Good engage there from Awesome Jake. Blink in, double knockup, but disengaged by the Jade Dragons is clean. Shell gets used. Awesome Jake uses his blink on the other side. Both ADCs hold on to their beads. This mid lane matchup, Gore, something, I would say unique on one side, less unique on the other, at least from what we've seen in the SCC in the qualifiers we've seen lately, where Agni felt like top of the tier list as far as mid lane goes. Like Agni and Thoth every single game. It feels like we saw during SPL or SCC rather qualifiers. And then a storied career on this pick.
Yeah.
Maybe back in the meta here with Flat Pen and just the way Agni's been.
And that's what I think it is. I think it's, like he got a little bit of a buff towards the end of last year that I thought was going to bring him into like fringe cases. And then he didn't get picked up, which kind of upset me. But I think this build path that is the meta right now that is being picked up by a lot of these mid laners, like you said, the double flat pin, most of the time to kick things off, really does enable him a lot more. And he's got a lot. I mean, look at that. Like how many other mages are going to be able to stun and get the damage out at a range like that? I think that's something that Agni brings out, and for a long time was used as like the quote-unquote pinnacle of balance for mages. He's got good stuns, good engage, good decent damage.
Oh no. Pagon baited, misses all of his auto attacks, and will die in trade. Ven sidesteps it all, and Pagon dies for first blood. The Olympus Bolts able to grab a kill.
So Pagon, I don't know like what he said, how but I saw his reaction. It cut immediately to Sam, and Sam was laughing, so either Pagon said something really funny or Sam laughs at the misfortune of his teammates, one of the two.
Right, I imagine
maybe both.
It's it's kind of like a welcome to the league type of moment there for Pagon.
They're hazing.
Right, you step too far forward, Ven dodges everything, and then Lazarus grabs first blood. So Pagon, honestly, Pagon stood out to me today. I think,
and he stood out of position there.
Out of position there. Bit of a stretch, but I'll give that one to you, Corey. I'll give that one to you for sure. Game 2 was great for Pagon. Are you feeling the pressure now, Corey? Game 3?
We need the support.
We need the support. The Baron support, we need you to step up. No, Pagon has had a couple good games here so far, and I think this team's growth throughout the year will be fun to watch. But for the Olympus Bolts, a better start for Lazarus than what we've seen in the last couple of games. Game 1, a slow starter for the Kabrak, and eventually got underway. Safer Soccer eyeing Veneno here. He's heading back over towards the red buff, but there is no red buff to be gotten. And so Sam will assist in the mid-heart piece.
I'm excited to watch this Hobwa pick because it has, I think, such a good top end in game. And I think that, again, like the damage that we can see from Sam, you go back to last game. Is he going to be the pick that gets in, gets out? No. Is he going to be the pick that admittedly survives a lot of these engagements? Probably not. Is he going to get a butt ton of damage off before he goes down? Absolutely. That's like all you've got. Most of the time it's Glass Cannon. It looks like he's going for that Doom Orb at the beginning again. So being able to kick things off with, again, a lot of damage, a little bit more mobility, which is something Hobwa desperately needs early on in the game, I think this is going to enable him to be a little more hands-on and get some of that damage out there. And he's got good burst.
Cataclysm won't come out just Awesome Jake. Hasn't been able to move for the last couple of seconds. PBM brings him in, and then some stuns connecting from elsewhere. And Awesome Jake, if nothing else, Gore gets to hold on to the Cataclysm. That might not have done much anyway, though Lazarus had rotated over to the left side of the map. Palau could have had its impact. PBM does not have beads to start off, Gore. And so I think Laz has the opportunity to turn some eyes towards the left. PBM's ultimate is down. In-kit CC immunity, therefore, is down. Could be an opportunity.
And honestly, I think that's what we need. You had kind of mentioned it, but early on, we got to see Lazarus kind of follow a curve of not really that impactful to greatly impactful on the Kabrakan. The set started off the same way, not really that impactful, kind of ended the same way, not in that impactful overall. Low damage numbers, not getting a lot of kills, not really doing a lot when he does get to the back line. And he got to the back line a fair amount. It should have amounted to a little bit more than him, but just didn't really get to stand out. And so this Daji, so far, off to a good start with the 1 kill. but I want to see more of this. I want to see it be active. I want to see it, get used when the CC immunity is down in lanes. I want to see it go out and try to get these beads specifically to set things up. And so if Lasber can get a little more hands-on, I think that's going to set up great success. Again, though, the Bolts right now, this is maybe the worst part of their game, right? Is into this Dragons lineup. You have to be a little more careful here. So I'm okay with him taking a little bit longer to get to that point, but I still need him active before the end of the game.
Polar Bear Mike will have his ultimate answered back with Lasber's ultimate, and this could be a death sentence for the Baron Samdi. Stun over the wall, but tanky enough is Mike, and the damage just hasn't flown through. Not just yet. There it is, as Ven deals the final burst of damage into Polar Bear Mike, but here's the re-engage from the Jade Dragons. Pandacat rotating over from the duo lane has got the damage and the first kill of the game for the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, and that's, you know what, that's the other thing to talk about here. Pandacat's back on this Uller. That, honestly, on its own, felt like it was enough to alleviate any of the weak points of the Dragons draft in Game 2, to the point where it was, double Bera's damage by the end of the game. It was 27k, he was 7-0. The next highest, I think, finally by the end was 20k, maybe. But, I mean, he put up so much in comparison to everybody else in the game that it was absolutely insane. So I think that if you're going to look at a point of contention for this team to find a lot of pressure to make up for any weak points they have, again, a very squishy team from top to bottom on the Dragons, and for a while it's going to stay that way looking at the builds, I think Pandacat is going to be the guy. I think if you see him go this Trans into Crusher, into hi-rez, into, Heartseeker, I think, right afterward, and then it was into a Titans at the very end, if he can get to the point where he gets that build even halfway online, the damage is going to be there, and he's going to be a reliable point of damage for the Dragons.
I'm surprised, actually, Gore, now that sort of thinking about it more. Panda's gotten this Uller and is, outside of a forgettable moment in Game 1, had a couple very good games on this pick. I mean, game number 2 was absurd. I mean, that was almost all Pandacat. 10,000 damage ahead.
He wanted to make sure that we didn't mention the Primal Fury death again.
Well, unlucky. We have to look back at the entirety of the set, and he died to a Primal Fury, and so I have to bring it back up. But the good news is, you're right. You kind of you clean the slate a little bit with a 7-0 game on Uller in Game 2. And the Bolts obviously feel like they've got some answers to it, because you let the pick go through. Don't pick it for Bera. You let Pandacat get it. You don't ban it out. And so maybe realizing or feeling as if game number 2 was more of an outlier than what you'll normally get. But I think you're right, Gore. With enough scale-up time for Pandacat, the threat looms large over the horizon as the game's still equal. 9 minutes in, first blood difference has effectively been wiped out. As the Olympus Bolts go searching around this red buff, around the purple buff, and a back-breaking 300 gold lead for the Jade Dragons. It's the only difference so far, 9 minutes in.
Realistic. I mean, I even look down to stacks on Thieves. That's how when I'm reaching for things like that. That's how you know things haven't been going too crazy. This is going to be a big win potentially for whoever gets it.
Cataclysm down, and the Jade Dragons take away the Gold Fury, and that 300 gold lead expands out a little bit further. A basic attack from Pagon gives the Fury over to the Jade Dragons, and that is a decent little gold spike, as the Olympus Bolts did 90% of the damage, and the last 100 or so came from Pagon's auto attack.
And realistically, you're in this awkward spot, right? You had to leash the Gold Fury because you don't want it to get picked up or stolen away specifically by the Petrified, but also that means that they could just walk up and continue taking on whatever you've left. So I like the tenacity from the Bolts, but it became a coin flip at a certain point, and unfortunately, coin flips aren't that great. 50-50 odds in the middle of an objective when no one has a lead yet, that's where things get really shaky for you. The Dragons, luckily, they get to come out on top. It doesn't even matter that the kills are technically down. I mean, 2-1, who cares? So realistically, that's a good lead. And again, this is a comp that will thrive off of this. I mean, you've got Baron's Brew already, something that really helps your early game out, but you've got good damage, right? Right now, you've got just insane damage from all sources. And so realistically, you should be able to take fights, at least to Ven, to Lasber, to Bera, and really just cause them a lot of trouble. I'm almost surprised to see how quiet it's been, mainly from Sam, right? I mean, we saw a little bit of the Hobwa earlier, but otherwise he's kind of just here.
Yeah, he's just existing. Got that one assist helped out in a kill where all of the Jade Dragons got an assist, and Pandacat got the kill. has otherwise just been hanging out, farming up, getting the Doom Orb ready to go. Same could be said for Lasbro, though. Was active early. Same could be said really for both teams. Don't have to just isolate the junglers, but usually junglers setting the pace alongside the support at this point. So that's why our eyes go towards them. Veneno underway with the flat pen build. As Divine Ruin starts it off, makes some sense with some of the healing that the Jade Dragons are going to be able to do. Into a Chronos Pendant core. And then you got Sands of Time Chronos Pendant. Ven already at 30% CDR. That feels good early in this build. And I think this is something we've seen some of the mid laners go towards. Flat Pen, usually Divine Ruin, Chronos Pendant, into maybe something else for Flat Pen, or you just abandon and start going into percent pen depending on how the itemization starts to look. Awesome Jake. Needs some tankiness here. Pulled on in. The Jade Dragons won't have the follow-up just yet. But PBM been liberal with his use of the Life of the Party.
Yeah, and honestly, I like that. First off, with a name like Life of the Party, you got to be using it as often as possible, right?
What
But
Mike
also
is that?
the fact that, again, it just causes a lot of disruption. Whether or not like you're getting the pull feels really good, but the stun, 3 people right now don't have beads on the bolt, so either you're going to get a kill or you're going to force them to feel very uncomfortable. The 2 that do have beads, cool, now you got their beads pretty freely at that. So I think PBM being willing to throw that out as often as he has really set things up, I think, again, for late game. It'll open up opportunities for Sam, for FineOK, for Pagon to be able to find something.
Pyromancer is the answer for the Olympus Bolts. This time, nobody from the Jade Dragons will be in range to steal it away.
I'm trying to count up
sorry.
CC. And I think you saw, like, I'm
thought
sitting
you- no, I
here, like,
thought-
counting to myself.
I'll keep going then while you.
Well, no,
wait.
it's just, you know, if you think about it, because Life of the Party is pretty heavy-handed CC, and you get a little bit more from Baron all around. But you have, what, a knock-up from Habwa plus a slow, a conditional stun, and a root from Medusa, a stun from Panda Cat, and then a little bit of CC from FineOK, but none of it's, like, hard CC. So realistically, Mike needs to be the one.
Goodbye, Jake. Says Sam for Soccer as the kills have been even back up. Felt like a matter of time before that happened. It feels like Awesome Jake has been CC'd all across this map, and now only dies for the second time. It felt like a matter of time before another one of those kills rolled through, because Jake has just been looked at so often by the Jade Dragons up to this point. And this time, FineOK and Sam for Soccer are the ones sending their ultimates towards Awesome Jake. Second death of the game for Awesome Jake as well. The Gebgor is now falling a little bit behind, 2 levels down to PBM.
And that's a good spot for PBM. Right? Again, this is a comp, and Geb is still going to be capable at level 9. The biggest difference for these two in terms of level is going to be second Relic when it comes down to level 12. But most importantly, Baron's still going to be dealing damage.
Whoa, up into the ultimate goes Lasbra. Panda Cat doesn't die, not just yet, but Lasbra's going to have to crash down. Petrify out, shielding good enough from Awesome Jake to keep Lasbra on the map. Sam for Soccer on the chase, doesn't have his ultimate. Not just yet, but Veneno's got the damage. Drops it on the head of FineOK. The Olympus Bolts grab the only kill of this fight onto the solo laner of the Dragons.
And again, get 1 kill, walk away. This is a team comp. The longer it takes, the better it feels for you. I mean, Dave, you know, you talk about that Fury earlier on, especially the fact that it goes to the Dragons. Very unfortunate scenario for the Bolts. But at the end of the day, I think that's where they're lacking, right? Is their objective secure. Burn should be there, and Teamfight should be there. Sam's got to learn that the hard way.
Oh, stun, but knock up from Sam. Doesn't do much to Ven. The wave is out, and it doesn't look like Haddix is going to be able to reinitiate. Sam for Soccer will live the onslaught from the Olympus Bolts. But this, again, is the threatening point of Ven and his build. You get Divine Ruin, Chronos Pendant, plus Sands of Time for 30% CDR on the flat pen, and then a nice power spike ore in the Tier 2 Ob Shard.
Now they can start this up. And again, this is where their strengths are going to be. Petrify's down, the Habwa ult is down. You've got pretty much free reign on this Fury in terms of secure, or it will be a 50-50 unless you go for the zone. And so FineOK can create some pressure. Same thing for Mike.
Fino doesn't steal away the only Fury this time. The Olympus Bolts make no mistake. There is a slight chase here from the Jade Dragons. FineOK able to sidestep some of the damage, and it looks like Fury and out is all the Olympus Bolts are concerned about here. And Gore, wouldn't you guess it? We're brought right back to even.
And honestly, again, I love this. It's better for the Bolts longer term. Unfortunate for the Dragons because they have, again, I think a good team that can roll forward. But this is where things really start to fall apart for this draft.
Good thinking, Gore. Rolling forward is Awesome Jake. Knock up and stun onto Sam for Soccer. Cataclysm used. But again, Awesome Jake gets taken down. Third death of the game, all of them onto the Olympus Bolt support. That's a dash away from Ven as the Jade Dragons smell blood in the water, and they will continue to walk forward. Pagon sends out the Petrify to slow down Barracuda, and it's just the tier 1 tower, no more kills.
Now, that was like the perfect example of both of these teams' capabilities. The Dragons are just pouring out damage and damage and damage and damage. There's slows, there's things like that, but it's just damage stacking on top of each other. The Bolts are stunning people, peeling for each other. Like, you know, they theoretically die in that fight if it's not for the fact that they've got an Artio, a Geb, and an Agni, right? There's so much to really slow down the Dragons from their surge forward. And I think it's a very interesting just way to tackle this fight, because the Dragons aren't out of this, and I don't know that they will be. It really does depend. Like, again, as the game goes on, a normal composition like the Bolts falls in line with what we expect to be able to just do well. You're going to have 2 tanks, a lot of good CC, along with a lot of capable mages, mage damage, ADC damage, and then whatever Lasbra ends up contributing. Right now, 1-0-1. He's been doing a lot. The Powwows are important, so having the Daji is just big for them.
Yep.
Whereas the other side, it's all right, let's see who we can pull in and just kill. And then we're going to have a numbers advantage, so we can just continue going, and guess what? Kill.
Yeah, who's been getting killed a lot? It's been Awesome Jake. Final K on the other side has only died once so far this game. Palau is good, and there's your kill for the Olympus Bolts. Lasbra has been quiet for a little while with the Daji ultimate. Picks a good time to make some noise. His Final K down for 35 seconds. How about this on the left side of the map, though? The Jade Dragons rallying just a bit. Barracuda only has Aegis, no beat. Sidesteps the initial. Yeah, no shot there. That is a world of hurt rallying around the left side of the map. Cataclysm onto Sanford Soccer from Awesome Jake, and a stun from Veneno keeps things interesting. Needed one more bomb and then some. And so Sanford Soccer will live.
They maintain their life, like you said, they're live, but it's that balancing point. 6 seconds of that fine, okay. If Barrow had, if it had been anybody that was a backline, like if Lazar or Vindai, I think you're able to get a Fire Giant right there. It's just because it's Barra that it's like this shaky call. But I still feel like a Pyromancer probably could have been taken by the Bolts there, at least something to kind of alleviate the stress. Again, the Dragons, and this blows my mind, you know, last Fury goes to the Bolts, and yet the Dragons are still the ones that are pulling ahead, that still have, you know, a gold lead, still have an experience lead. And so I think that the Bolts, especially losing out on something like the Pyromancer there, that's a huge deal for them. This comp, and especially the scenario they were just in with everybody over on left, should have at least gotten you some sort of neutral objective or some sort of steals. And so it feels like they're playing a little too, almost too safe, right? You're not going for some of the risks that you need to go for.
Right.
And you're missing out on the opportunities that could get you a lead.
Been a pretty quiet game, Gore, damage-wise. Only a couple of thousand gold, 18 gold damage, separating everyone else from, and then Final K is way up top. But it feels like all the other roles have been pretty closely knit with one another. Further down the damage charts, though, is Lasbra. Again, the Palau has had its impact. You'd hope for a little bit more damage with the way that his build has started to take shape. But it's in the next couple of minutes, as you've detailed, where Jotuns, Hydras, Brawlers, damage could start to stick for Lasbra on this Daji. Gold Fury about a minute from spawning. Would be a nice avenue back into this game for the Olympus Bolts. And that would just be like peak this set, wouldn't it? The Olympus Bolts like cleanly get the Gold Fury plus a kill, and then we're brought right back to even 20 minutes in. I'm so used to seeing these two teams, not necessarily even against one another, but just in general, win or lose a game in like 20 to 22 minutes. The fact that we've gone 30 in back-to-back games, and there's a possibility that we do that again here, an awesome way, I think, to start off our weekend.
I am throwing this off the top of my head, but I know at least for Season 7,
That's
the
impressive.
longest game of the year was these two teams for like 65 minutes.
Was that the 65 minutes? That better not have been the 4-kill game.
No,
God
no,
help
no,
whoever
no,
was
no,
casting
no.
that.
This is 4-kill game of Season 8. The Season 7, like, and it was, again, it was Renegades at the time, but the same 4 outside of Haddix that were there.
Yeah.
And so the Bolts, you know, the Dragons roster, mostly the same. Say it was Twig instead of Pagon. They're willing to and capable of pushing each other very, very far. Back and forth Fire Giants, back and forth Furies, back and forth team fights. I mean, even things like this aren't really guaranteed when you get a good engage.
Good engage is here. onto Polar Bear Mike, but watch out for Life of the Party. He can bait you in underneath these tier 1 towers and then pull you into your death. There's been good poke damage out of the Olympus Bolts. You wouldn't think the Jade Dragons are the team with the 2,500 gold lead, though this is the power of Ven, isn't it, Gore? When you get this far into your build, 3 completed items, looks like a Soul Reaver after, there's just no range that can fully compete with the amount of, you talk about a little bit of poke from Fino, a little bit of poke from Sam, Panda Cat's got some as well. But just the cooldowns from Ven. I mean, it's just such an advantage for the Bolts, and if you can play around that at the start of these fights, could be a good way of mitigating that 2,000 gold lead.
2,000 gold, 21.5 minutes in. It's not a lot of gold, is it?
Has anyone, I'm sorry, this is a total side note,
okay,
and I might have to return to it after the Gold Fury, which is not going to get pulled yet. Has anyone ever quantified like how much like a gold piece in Smite is? Like that seems like a good piece of content to somehow, doing a bunch of math and line drawing to certain things, like 1 gold is worth 20 realized dollars.
Whoever wants to do it, I'll set you up. Just look up the price of gold and then look up how much gold is in the
in
Greek,
average.
What is it like how do you pronounce it? Like drachma?
Oh, I have no idea. You're
it's the like old golden coin in a lot of
like
mythology.
a standard gold coin.
Because I'm pretty sure that's what we base our gold is on.
Got it. So a lot of gold, Gore. 2,000 gold could be hefty.
It's a lot
for
of money.
You and I. Gold Fury is melting. Olympus Bolts do not steal it away. As the Jade Dragons widen up their gold lead, but have they used too much around the objective? Sam for Soccer uses the beads. Petrify out from Pagon as well. Everything defensive from the Jade Dragons. As Haddix and the rest of the Bolts turn their eyes around the corner, but no kill is there. It is Gold Fury and eject for the Jade Dragons.
And again, that's good play. For what this comp is, they either, if they want to fight, they're going to fight, and they're going to roll over you. In most cases, again, hard CC from the Bolts maybe alleviates some of that pressure. But if you're the Dragons here, get the objectives, make the Bolts fall behind, win harder from ahead. And you can already see 1 level lead for solo, 2 in jungle, 1 in mid, 2 down there in support. Again, a lot of comfortable leads.
Lasbra doesn't have his power out this time. The Jade Dragons, though, suffer a massive stun on the back. And the Cataclysm from Awesome Jake is big, but there is no follow-up from the Olympus Bolts outside of a lot of damage onto Mike and a chunk into Fino K. I think 4 or 5 members of the Jade Dragons were stunned up there on the back. And there was just nothing there for the Bolts to win the fight.
And that's where I'm getting a little concerned. Last game left me concerned. This game's keeping me concerned. Where's the damage? Like, the CC has been there, the setup has been there, the peel has been there. Where's the damage? I think Bear's been putting up good numbers. Lasbra, I know, is not at the bottom of the charts anymore, but he was for a long time this game. And we've seen what Agni can do. So Lasbra's moved up slightly above. He's 1,000 damage above PBM, but 600 below Jake. And we're not seeing a whole ton from most of them. I mean, you've got good damage from Vin. And so it just makes me wonder where it is in some of these team fights. They've got a lot of CC, though. And theoretically, in a comp like the Dragons, if they dive too far, especially with the lack of beads that are currently up and available just generally,
yeah,
I think that a Pyromancer fight for the Bolts, just one good team fight's all it takes to finally get themselves a lead and get this fire charge.
I just want to express my distaste that Fino K has 16,999 damage right now. Any single... How the math worked out that he is 1 single damage off from a clean 17,000, I don't know. I just want to express...
I don't know if you were in earlier, but I pointed out one because Zap had 6,666 damage.
Right. The extra
Very
6, though, saves us from any sort of weird spiritual stuff going on there. Polar Bear Mike in Life of the Party will end up getting the stun onto Haddix, but shrugs that off quickly. Polar Bear Mike gets taken down as Ven is on a killing spree now, 24 minutes into this game. The 3rd
that should be
kill
enough
for the Olympus Bolts. Mid laner should be. The Olympus Bolts don't express the same confidence.
Well, it's that worry. So Petrify's down, and knowing that Petrify's down, that opens up, I think, an ease of access to a Fire Giant. Sam having his ult, it makes me shaky about it, because that is a lot of damage and an easy secure if he gets to the FG. But he's Habwa. Just kill him if he walks up to you. I mean, sometimes it really is that easy. And I'm surprised to see the Bolts as almost like patient, I guess, is the way they are. They are still going to go for it. They have a lot of time to work with since Mike had a long cooldown timer. So it's not the end of the world, but I do think they've allowed them a little bit of a reset period here for the Dragons.
Polar Bear Mike in 5 seconds, and then travel time.
Watch
but
Sam.
Reset is right. as the Olympus Bolts will not fully commit. Haddix didn't get the memo, though. He's walking into the rest of the Jade Dragons, lost some health in the meantime. Damage not quite connecting from Veneno, and it looks like disengage is on the mind of the Olympus Bolts. Barracuda not able to do so quick enough, and Sanford Soccer deletes him with the ultimate. Knockback from Awesome Jake. It's an opening kill from the Jade Dragons, gives him a 4 versus 5 advantage in the rest of this fight, and Sam doing massive numbers, nearly dies himself. As the rest of Haddix, Ven, and Jake can disengage, Lasbro left alone, and Panda Cat picks up the kill.
Honestly, no, okay, I was going to say, depending on where Panda Cat and Pagon go, they might not actually be disengaging. You've got 2 carries. If you want to shred a Fire Giant, this is the time to do it, right? I mean, you've got the composition that just deals and bleeds damage, and you just got 2 clean kills onto the Bolts. They're not going to be able to put up much of a defense here, if any. And so I like this read from the Dragons, but it feels like a missed opportunity from the Bolts. Maybe they don't trust their team fight, maybe they don't trust their capabilities of peeling, but the Dragons, you know, a man down was enough to keep them from even starting the Fire Giant for a long time. And again, it feels like small little windows of opportunity the Bolts had to close the gap and maybe put themselves in the lead. That now just falls right into the Dragons' lap and makes things look even easier for them.
Yeah, looks like we're headed to another 30-plus minute game, despite the Jade Dragons really pulling ahead in the back half of this game. Ven still carries a lot of weight here, Gore. Completed Soul Reaver, completed Ob Shard. So if that damage can connect, is a route back in this game for the Olympus Bolts. But the Jade Dragons just playing with much more itemization. Panda Cat sort of hit that point, as you've mentioned, got a kill on the Lasbro on the back end of that fight. Has started to climb up those damage charts just a little bit. But really, it is intriguing. Everyone's so close in all the damage. And then just a couple separators up there towards the top as Final K has continued his onslaught. At 0-2-4, you wouldn't expect that KDA to be 20,000 damage, 7,000 or so ahead of everyone else in this game. But the Kleedna has been a problem, Gore. And Soul Eater now built a couple times here today. Apparently synergizes pretty well with this style of pick.
And honestly, I think has showcased a lot of damage potential up against Lasbro, Vin, Barra. Specifically the Barra kill is where I think we got to see Fido K kind of flex that potential. It was a lot to handle. I mean, I don't blame Barra for dying there because there was way more damage in the blink of an eye than I think anybody would have expected. And that's really what this comp is, right? It's just more damage than you would expect. And they have, the benefits. They get the double ADC, so you've got a lot of burn. You've got 2 mages. So even though you don't have a lot of hard CC, you've still got good range damage. You've got Kleena, who has just been nuts throughout, so far, I would say, the day. But realistically here in this set, and specifically this game for Fino K. So I think it's a lot easier for them to continue looking good, especially when I roll back to looking at where the Bolts have been, and unfortunately, again, it's just like where they're going for endgame. I mean, Haddix, you get a root, even if you get a stun here, what's the point, right? Nobody's following up. Maybe you get a little bit of poke, but you're not doing a lot of damage. And that's where it just feels like they're missing out on a lot. Lasbro is, still relatively low on the damage charts, just, again, next to last, and hasn't been as active as I really would have liked to see this Daji.
Gore, the difference maker? The SpongeBob Blink picked up by Lasbro. The Scorching Blink is going to be the big difference maker. I can feel it. Laz is going to blink through. He's going to get just absurd damage numbers. Haddix is definitely not going to die here. Neither is Barracuda. It's a nice Cataclysm, though, from Awesome Jake to turn around the initial bit of damage that the Jade Dragons had thrown out. Polar Bear Mike just further whittles down those health bars. And this time the Olympus Bolts will live, but the left side Phoenix will not.
Once again, small place from the Dragons, right? It's get aggressive, get the beads, get the Phoenix, get out, right? You don't need the kills. You can whittle their health bars down as low as you want, but then you just wander away. And when you look at it, it's relics used for Haddix, so that becomes a much easier target to try and burn down next time. But specifically beads down for Barra, that means he needs to be incredibly worried. You've got a fortifying shell there for Mike. The Frenzy is going to be down on cooldown. Beads down for Fine. Okay, so this is a good window of opportunity for the Bolts to try and surge forward. Minute and a half before there's a Fire Giant respawned on the map, though, so even if you are able to walk, right now you can get Pyro. You walk forward and you get maybe a neutral objective, assuming the Dragons don't come up to fight you for it. So, map state-wise, where everything lies, the Bolts are just, they're stuck in this, really uncomfortable position where there's not a lot of farm for you. Jake needs gold a lot to just be able to catch up, but he hit 17, so at least can upgrade his starter. But you don't have anything on the map to help give you some sort of benefit jumping into the next fight, save for that pyro, and so far they haven't even made a move towards it.
Surprised, Gore, that Mike hasn't been under more pressure. And I think this is shout-outs to Mike. And the life of the parties have been well-timed, set up for 4 of the 6 kills that the Jade Dragons have. Granted, he's died twice out of 5 kills. That's, around half of the Olympus Bolts total. But with no beads and only CC immunity in that ultimate, you feel like Mike, might have been under more pressure from Laz or Jake with the Cataclysms, even stuns, some setup from Haddix. It's just a masterclass in positioning, sometimes something that can go under the radar, but Mike has played around the lack of beads and only the CC immunity in the ultimate apparently very well. Continues to be a threat up against the Olympus Bolts. Zen is still undying, so it's Haddix. A couple avenues back into this game as the Jade Dragons await the respawn of the Fire Giant. This one will be enhanced, and luckily for the Jade Dragons, it is an Oni Fury on the left side of the map and not a Primal Fury. And there are fire minions walking down the left side of the map. So the Jade Dragons feel like they're in a position here in Game 3. Massive 13,000 gold lead. Fire minions pouring down the left. You can buy your time, grab this Fury, or Fire Giant rather. Maybe end this game, but Awesome Jake has got something else in mind. Final case stunned and chunked down by Ven. But Awesome Jake burned down by Pagon. Frenzy gets used on the other end of this fight as Haddix was desperately searching for an engage, but it just was not there. Barracuda sends damage back in, and here come Haddix and Laz, and they're re-engaging, but the kills have just not fallen for the Bolts, and everything is there for the Jade Dragons as they lose both of their frontliners.
And this is where we get to, I never thought I'd get to talk about this throughout the year. We get to talk about the emblem of increasing peril. It's a relic there.
That
for
sounds
Fino
terrifying.
It kind of is, but honestly, only against a draft like this. Also, fire minions are pulling in. It's really that last little bit. So a lot of people, you know what this does up to this point. You've got attack speed and damage reduction, speed movement reduction. Sam goes down low. Dave, this might just be game.
Yeah.
I want to talk about it. It's such a cool relic.
No, you're not allowed to, Goris. The fire minions might just end this set. It's Barracuda plus Awesome Jake. This game will end. The Jade Dragons don't need an FG. They just need the fire minions. And in the base they walk in Game 3. Emblem of increasing peril. You'll have to wait for another day to be analyzed.
Oh, no, I'm still going to talk about
Dragons. Okay, fine, go ahead.
I'm going to do it right now.
Okay, go ahead.
Whenever, again, whenever your team's receiving damage, and I think it's 10% of your HP or your teammate's HP, which I don't know if you know this, but they were very squishy, so 10%, really easy to hit that threshold. Then all of the debuffs from that relic increase by 10%. So if you're getting hit with that in the fight, all of a sudden every damage you dealt to a squishy comp like the Dragons, you're getting worse and worse at team fighting as it goes on. And look, I'm gonna highlight it. They already weren't doing a whole lot of damage on the Bolt, so having that get taken away from you and things like that, I think really, again, it's a small little relic, but I saw it used there towards the end, and I like the way that they managed to fit it in. I think a lot of that is just they take a lead, they find a lead, they continue to pushing the lead, the Bolts don't try to take back the lead, and then eventually the Dragons just kind of keep doing things that team does from ahead.
Gore, it really feels like the Dragons and the Bolts is starting to just become a classic matchup here over the last few years, Season 7, Season 8, and already here in Season 9.
I know Vonnie had mentioned it on Twitter earlier, but was trying to figure out what is El Clasico of Smite. It's got to either be Bolts versus Dragons or Barra versus Zap. That's the two
it could
options.
be, right. If you're doing team dependent versus player dependent, plenty of arguments to be made. It's been a lot of fun years of Smite over the last few years. Happy birthday, Smite, by the way, just in general, as a game. You bring us awesome competitive action like this. The Jade Dragons win this one in 3. We'll take a break. When we come back, Dusk will break it down.
Welcome back to the SPL Kickoff Tournament. The Jade Dragons in 3 are finally able to take this set with a 2-1 win over the Olympus Bolts with a less than conventional draft is the easiest way to put it out here, but it took them a little bit longer than kind of the time from you were giving them there, Mifflin. We talked in the pregame. You're saying, kind of first 10, 15 minutes is really where the Dragons need to get that big lead, but it wasn't until 20, 25 minutes that we saw them finally kind of break out.
Yeah, all my Smite conventional knowledge, all the years of practice and study I've put into this game, all invalidated by one SPL kickoff match, man. That was something else. It felt like it was just mechanics. Like in the team fights, the Jade Dragons were simply landing more. They were confirming the kills a little bit more easily, and I suppose when that's happening, similarly to that age-old Mifflin family secret I gave you earlier, land more abilities, you probably win.
Especially when those abilities hit as hard as some of these gods out here. I mean, Habwa, Uller, Medusa, 3 of the higher damaging gods out there on the field, just in general, not even here in this game. Panda Cat has another great performance, 3 games in a row, and it's something I was bringing up during Picks and Bans for Game 3 was, when your hunter goes 2 solid games on a god like Uller, is it really worth taking the risk of giving it to him a 3rd time in a row?
I'd say yeah. I mean, clear. Do you want him playing like his Ho Yi? It's P-Cat, man. What do you want from me? I don't know how to. If I had the answer to how to shut down Panda Cat, I wouldn't be on the desk. I'd be out there playing too. Look, there is certainly a conversation to be had of don't feed the hot hand, and the Uller was looking incredibly strong, barring exactly one 1v1 that he lost to an NPC. But besides that, do you want him playing the Izanamis? Do you want him playing these more aggressive, more meta picks? Do you want him on the Medusa? I don't think so. I think I'd let the Uller through. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out, so I suppose I'm just wrong.
Uller looked good, as well as pretty much the entire team that's drafted around side this Uller, the Baron support, the Cleo solo. I can't believe some of the words I'm even saying out here. The Habwa jungle.
Just gibberish.
We live in a meta right now that is just
This is a
out
meta.
there. This is what you can maybe hope to experience as we start going further down the line. I mean, we're not even technically at the full start of the SPL, and we're already seeing some of this crazy stuff come out here. Panda Cat with another 6 kills this game. Top of the damage charts this time, though, goes over to Final K on that Kleena solo. Get to see that one come back out again. We're seeing success of that god now as a full multi-role.
Yeah, Kleena is just strong, man. She can fill in just about anywhere. The only weakness of that god is the lack of CC. She doesn't have any hard confirmable CC. At best, you're applying that silence through a long channel, or it's a slow through the ultimate. But what she doesn't have in CC, she makes up for in burst and elongated, just consistent damage thanks to that ultimate. The objective shred, all incredibly strong. And we know Final K just doesn't want to play tanks, man. He wants to be on the Bastats. He wants to be on the Kleenas. Keep him happy.
Nobody ever wants to play what the meta is. They want to play whatever they want to play out here. And, well, Panda Cat, our pregame interview, got to play Uller 3 games in a row. Panda, when you get into games in sets like these and they're just giving you a god that you keep running with here, what's kind of the mental and kind of the talks and comms in Picks and Bans like that?
I think it's nice, especially for a tournament like this where we don't want to show too much, so I'm just playing the same character 3 times in a row, so whoever's watching, they're like, I don't know, maybe he loves the character, maybe he's just playing it for fun. So it's nice to hold some strats, and he's just fun, so, like playing him.
Yeah, can never go wrong with just being able to play something fun. And again, like you said, not having to reveal anything, especially for just day 1 of the tournament. Now that you've had your first real competitive set out here with Pagon over into the mid lane, how's it kind of feel meshing with another carry out there?
Oh, Pagon's a beast. I was one of the people who vouched for him really hard in the preseason, and getting to play with him in the past couple months and just figuring out what he likes to do and how he does it, I'm very proud of him, and I think he's going to be a very, very good teammate this year, and I think he's going to pop off.
Saw that you were kind of reading through some of those notes to figure out, the buffs on the Gold Fury out there. Maybe a little bit ready for it in those next couple of sets coming up.
Listen, sometimes you get got. Gold Fury got me, and then I got them the next 2 games. So
there you go. At the end of the day,
That's
your
so
team's
sick.
the one that comes out with that was a pretty slick one out there. Thank you so much for taking your time. I'll let you get back to the team to celebrate. Congrats on your win.
Thank you.
Sometimes you get, sometimes you get got.
He's just so much
and this
cooler.
time he got it.
Oh my god.
He got, and then the Bolts got 2 games later. That was pretty good.
Look,
maybe he should just take over.
You might get, but I'm gonna get got though, and he got him, so that's how it be. Full stop.
He got him out.
I
here.
want to be as cool as him, bro. I tried, it didn't work.
Let's take a look at the bracket to see what you've missed so far and what you can expect for the rest of our day out here. The Leviathans with their 2-0 earlier on, and now the Jade Dragons 2-1. Those two teams will face off tomorrow, as you can see, in a best-of-5 semifinal. Our next setup is going to be the Solar Scarabs and the Camelot Kings. Then after that, Tartarus Titans and the Oni Warriors will face off, and then the winner of those two teams, or those two sets, I should say, will move on into our second best-of-5 semifinal. As I said, Solar Scarabs, Camelot Kings, the next teams to come up here, and this is sure to be a big match. The last time that these two teams faced off, I believe it went to a full 5-game set out of these two.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. The Solar Scarabs are one of the most vocal teams in the league, always saying that they're better. Every time you see a Solar Scarabs loss, hop on one of their Twitters, specifically Inbound the Support, and he'll say, the better team lost. I think you can only say that so many times before you get the clown moniker. Maybe if they win here today, well, it'll garner them a little bit more respect because the Camelot Kings are no pushovers. This is a team that I've got very high expectations for coming into this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they find themselves like top 3. If I'm going to give you a sneak peek at the Mifflin SPL Power Rankings, I really think the Kings can do it.
Well, two teams that got knocked out in the semis during Worlds last year are now going to face off to see if they can make it to the semis for this tournament. We'll see what happens in the next set right after this.